going up, but the council has put stricter requirements in place.
There's this sort of 3.8 degree of warming measurement, which requires consent holders to prove that they can withhold a flood if the world warms to 3.8 degrees, so pretty extensive.
The Resource Management Act Minister Chris Bishop says a government direction due this year will create a nationally consistent approach to the risks posed by natural hazards. A right-leaning economist has welcomed the government's plan for a foreign investment agency, but says there is something missing from the growth strategy. The Prime Minister made announcements last week saying the government is focused on growth. But Eric Crampton from the New Zealand Initiative think tank says Christopher Luxon did not mention the government's structural deficit, where its spending outstrips what it takes in taxes.
There's still no addressing of the massive structural deficit in the accounts that the government still oversees. They were making claims about careful spending. Well, really, they're just keeping to the forecasts from a few months ago, and those forecasts were pretty poor.
Eric Crampton says the government is still on track to spend more than it did under Labour's Jacinda Ardern for many years to come. The Justice Committee Chair, James Meagher, says its members have worked to ensure a broad range of views is put forward when the first oral hearings for the Treaty Principles Bill start today. The committee's set to listen to more than 80 hours of submissions in total. Its MPs have selected those being heard first. James Meagher says the reality is they won't be able to hear from everybody, but it is right to have those with a contribution to make. Mr Meagher says it's not uncommon for select committees to decide their own selection procedures when there's no capacity to hear from everyone who wants to speak. That's the news.
Thank you very much, Nicola. This is Morning Report. Good to have you along this morning. Shortly we'll get an update from Fire and Emergency's Northern District Manager on the situation on the ground in Mangawhai after those extraordinary winds and damage that has been caused there. First, let's go to sport with Nathan. Good morning, Nathan.
Sure are.
It is nice to be back. And the tennis, the Australian Open. A pretty comfortable winner in the end.
Yeah, pretty one-sided. Yannick Sinner underlined why he's the world's best men's player by securing back-to-back Australian Open titles with a merciless victory over Alexander Zverev. The Italian top seed delivered in the decisive moments to win in straight sets against the second seed. The Black Ferns Sevens have been beaten 28-26 by Australia in the final of the Perth round of the World Series. Reece Pody-Lane scored late in the game but was unable to convert her try, which would have sent the game into overtime. The Ferns still lead the series by 2 points from Australia. Meanwhile, the All Black Sevens beat Kenya 19-12 and finished 9th in the men's competition. Argentina beat Australia in the final. Auckland FC are back at the top of the men's A-League table after a last-gasp 1-0 win over Western Sydney Wanderers in Parramatta. Substitute Neda Moreno struck the winner in the 95th minute. Meanwhile, the Phoenix women were beaten 1-0 at the Central Coast Mariners. And the Breakers are out of playoff contention in the Australian NBL after losing 94-78 at the Adelaide 36ers. Koina ngā pūrongo hakinakina. That's your sports news. Nicola is back with weather after this.
I'm Catherine Ryan. On 9 to Noon this week, Gene Kelly was one of the most famous actors and dancers. Now his story's told by his widow, Patricia Ward Kelly. Chronic insomniac turned sleep expert, Kate McHale. Dancer Lula Washington, whose company's trained new generations of dancers in LA. And Caroline Darien on the case that shocked the world. Her mother, Giselle Pellico, drugged and raped by her father and many others over a decade. With me on 9 to Noon on RNZ National.
Now the forecast from Met Service to midnight. Northland to Waitomo, including Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, Taupo and Taumarunui. Showers clearing to fine in most places this morning, but Northland this afternoon. Taranaki to Manawatu, including Taihape, scattered showers clearing this afternoon. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, some cloud, isolated showers till evening. Wairarapa, Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington showers, may be heavy, clearing and becoming fine this afternoon in the west and this evening for Wairarapa. Nelson, Bulla, Grey and Westland, isolated showers for Bulla and Grey until afternoon, then in Nelson this evening, otherwise fine. Marlborough and Canterbury, rain or showers, mostly clearing this afternoon but lingering for Marlborough. Fiordland, Otago and Southland, scattered showers, could be heavy this morning, clearing this afternoon or evening. Chatham Islands, rain with the chance of thunder, easing this afternoon. Main centres. Auckland isolated showers clearing to fine late morning, southwesterly strong in exposed places, easing in the evening and a high of 23. Tauranga fine but with the chance of a morning shower. Southwesterlies ease from evening 26. Hamilton fine, there may be a shower this morning, southwesterlies easing in the evening 23. Wellington showers could be heavy, clearing to fine this afternoon. Strong southerlies easing in the evening, a high of 17. Christchurch rain may be heavy, clearing to fine this afternoon. Strong southwesterlies ease this evening, 18 degrees. And Dunedin, a few showers clearing in the evening, and fresh southwesterlies easing then, a high of 16 today. You're listening to RNZ National. It's 8 minutes past 6.
Ngā mihi, thank you very much, Nicola. And this is Morning Report on RNZ National. Good to have you with us this Monday morning. Well, the clean-up in Mangawhai continues today after a devastating storm struck the Northland town overnight on Saturday night. 50 homes were damaged. Power was knocked out as well, and some trees were knocked down. The winds struck the Northland town at 3 a.m. on Sunday morning. Alan Johnson lives in Orewa but has a house in Mangawhai. He spoke to our reporter Peter de Graaf and said that his daughter Tina was hospitalised after the storm completely destroyed the upper story where she was sleeping.
The top floor is gone, but every room is damaged. It basically is probably a write-off, I would think.
Yeah. You were saying your daughter was home at the time?
Yeah, she was sleeping in the top room.
Which is gone.
It's gone.
How did she get out, Alan?
We don't know. We basically know that she survived the tornado coming over. Because there was nothing there, she escaped onto that carport, jumped down, and then of course there was rescue of people here. So that's as much as I know.
And how is she now?
She's in Auckland Hospital and waiting surgery. She's got lacerations and broken bones.
But she'll be all right?
Yes, she'll survive. Yeah.
And your house was on the market?
Yeah, it was supposed to be an open home today. It was an open home yesterday. The house was in beautiful condition, like tip-top condition. Now look at it.
Must be devastating now.
It is really devastating. We'd worked 4 years to get it up to this stage.
So it must have been a terrible shock.
Shock.
This morning when you heard.
I'm still in shock.
Absolutely. Now, Nick Bertu says the storm broke nearly every window in his home and concrete tiles have punctured the roof there. He describes the moment here where it struck.
Yeah, and about 10 to 3 at night, the wind and rain just stopped and had a really eerie sort of feeling, and then out of nowhere we heard it kind of sound like a turbine kind of turning on and getting louder and cranking louder and louder, and yeah, before you know it, you could hear our outdoor furniture smashing the glass through our kitchen and various other windows. So, yeah, it's quite a horrific sound. Again, one I never wish to hear again or experience anyway. So, yeah.
And no one was hurt from your family?
No one was hurt. We've got a missing cat, which I'm a bit upset about, but yeah, it is what it is.
What's the cat's name?
Tilly the cat. Yeah.
Nice, what's Tilly?
Yeah.
But you've got quite an amazing effort going on here.
Yeah.
Who are all these people?
Yeah, so I mean, Mangawhai's a small community, but they clearly just look after their own. They're amazing, you know, like we haven't contacted anybody for help. They've literally done it all on their own. And I mean, I've got people here that I've never met before, and they just offer up their time and their trade to come and help out.
Well, that was Nick Bertu, a Mangawhai resident, just describing there that horrific incident with the tornado hitting there over the weekend in the early hours of Sunday morning. It is 12 minutes past 6 now.
Yeah, let's talk now to Fire and Emergencies Northern District Manager Wipari Henwood, who was on the ground in Mangawhai yesterday. Kia ora, good morning.
Morning.
Tell us, we know about 50 homes were damaged yesterday. Has that changed, that number, given the time you've had to assess things?
Yesterday we put up the use of drones to scan a wider section of the community, and I suppose it's the severity of damage. So outside the epicentre, there are other houses that have issues with trees down and things like that. So potentially, that number has grown, but the damage or the severity of the damage isn't as great as the epicentre.
Do we know how many families have had to actually leave their homes?
No, not exactly. Obviously, yesterday morning, we were asking people to self-evacuate if they couldn't, if it wasn't safe to stay in their homes, and everybody that needed to evacuated and moved to families or their next-door neighbours. So, no, we don't have an exact number on that. I think today the local council will be doing those door knocks to ascertain the exact number of people.
But it's pretty clear from that drone footage, is it, that there will be plenty of families that won't be able to stay at home?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the different degrees of devastation for property owners. So, in particular, one 2-story place had the whole top story ripped off their house. A lot of houses with, trees still in the roofs. Quite a few of them, actually.
Mm. The cordon, can you tell us about that? Is that still in place? Will that be removed?
So I think the remaining cordons is around Old Waipu Road. That's because the number of power lines down and just lying on the ground. We've got North Power there that we're working quite late into the night to, lift those power lines up and to put the power poles back up and reinstate the power. They were making terrific progress yesterday afternoon. We'll see today in the light of day how that progress is being made. Initial estimates were that they had 20 power poles that were snapped off.
Wow. I mean, it just seems extraordinary that it was this isolated area was hit so hard. I've seen reports suggesting that this area does get affected or has been affected by, so-called tornadoes. I know because the officials aren't necessarily saying it was a tornado, although I'm sure locals feel like it was.
Yeah, I wasn't arguing with the locals. They said it was a tornado. I wasn't there when it happened, but I mean, there's certainly a lot of devastation that suggests it was.
Yeah, and in terms of your role for the day then, as you say, the Civil Defence and the local council will be stepping up there if it's no doubt your role in the next day or so?
Yeah, so our role is just there to support the council. Obviously, we've got our own normal BAU. So, but if the property owners need any assistance, what's interesting is for us is when the power comes back on, that's probably our greatest risk time. That people haven't isolated all the power, or there's further damage inside buildings. People turn the power back on, and there could be heightened risk for fire.
And what about I haven't actually checked the forecast, but if there's roofs gone, is that a worry? Can you get people in to put tarpaulins on and that sort of thing?
So there are definitely a lot of houses with no roofs. So I don't think Fire and Emergency's got that many tarpaulins, but we can definitely help out when necessary.
Hey, thanks very much for talking to us. We do appreciate that. That is Wipari Henwood there, who is who's Fire and Emergency's Northland District Manager. Has been on the ground yesterday there with an update on the situation, and we'll get more too from the council and Civil Defence as to what's going to play out there in Mangawhai today. It is 16 minutes past 6.
And you're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. Well, in Canterbury, a person was freed from the wreckage of a caravan last night after a tree fell on the vehicle. Emergency services arrived at the scene in Balmoral, which is just south of Culverden, about 20 past 7 last night, to find a large tree lying across the caravan. Fire and Emergency Shift Manager Simon Lyford says a digger and a local farmer's tractor were brought in to help remove the tree. St John ambulance staff had actually been treating the patient while they were still trapped inside. Efforts to get a rescue helicopter to the incidents were unsuccessful. That had to be stood down because of the weather there. The person was eventually freed just before 10 p.m. St John Ambulance said the patient had critical injuries. They were taken to Christchurch Hospital by ambulance. That trip, about 90 kilometres. We'll have more on the story as it comes to hand. At 17 past 6 now.
Let's head overseas. US President Donald Trump has told a rally of supporters in Las Vegas that he may rejoin the World Health Organization. Now, this comes, of course, just days after he signed an executive order which would pull the US out of the UN Global Health Agency. The president has criticised the WHO for its role during the COVID pandemic, and he says America pays too much towards the WHO compared to other countries like China. Now, the US is due to leave the WHO in January of next year. Here is Donald Trump talking at his rally in Las Vegas.
I withdrew from the World Health Organization, where we paid $500 million a year and China paid $39 million a year, despite a much larger population. Think of that. China's paying $39 million to have 1.4 billion people. We pay $500 million. Nobody knows what the hell we have. Does anyone know? We have so many people pouring in, we have no idea. We go up, but we're going down a little bit now. You don't mind that, do you? Gonna take some bad ones out. I withdrew 4 years ago, but Biden immediately went back for even more money. I mean, he went back and, they offered me at $39 million. They said, we'll let you back in at 39. So we're going to reduce it from 500 to 39. I turned them down because it became so popular. I didn't know if it would be well received even at 39. But maybe we would consider doing it again. I don't know. Maybe we would. They have to clean it up a little bit.
Well, that was Donald Trump speaking at a rally in Las Vegas. It is 19 minutes past 6.
Yeah, Corin, it's interesting, isn't it, to be back on air with all the Trump
it's hard to keep up.
Issues
it's just
unfolding.
So fast.
Yeah, that was one of the news stories that was kept me pretty engaged, even when I was at home as a civilian listening to the news. It's just going to be extraordinary. It is 19 minutes past 6 now. You are listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. One of the world's busiest airports, London Heathrow, could be set for a major expansion. They've been talking about this for a while. The airport has 2 runways, but British Chancellor Rachel Reeves says she's in favour of a 3rd runway. The BBC's Simon Browning reports.
After a week of speculation, the Chancellor inched closer this morning to backing a 3rd runway at Heathrow. Rachel Reeves told the BBC that sustainable aviation and growth can go together, and that she will reveal more in her speech on Wednesday.
A 3rd runway will mean that instead of circling London, flights can land at Heathrow. A lot has changed in aviation, and sustainable aviation and economic growth go hand in hand. We're an open trading economy. We need to bring investment in.
Demand to travel is growing and Heathrow is almost at capacity. But opposition to Heathrow's expansion is well established, with recent objections reaching the courts.
It's a long time since we last had a proper economic analysis of what Heathrow expansion would deliver, and even when that was last done, it was marginal at best, and I don't think that picture is going to have improved. So there is no economic case for expanding Heathrow, and we know how damaging it will be to the environment and to the noise impact on people living all across West and South West London.
In the last fortnight, Rachel Reeves has promoted the UK's aims for growth in China and Davos to politicians and business leaders. On Wednesday, we'll hear more about those plans, including reforms to the Planning and Infrastructure Bill to axe red tape that slows down approvals for major building projects, building homes near transport hubs to enable better connections for workers to towns and cities, and a regeneration project in Old Trafford, Greater Manchester, to develop housing, commercial and public spaces. But a decision on Heathrow is expected on Wednesday. There are no live and current planning processes for it, unlike other airport expansion schemes, and they will take a long time to achieve. That alongside conflicts with environmental and climate targets.
Well, that was the BBC's Simon Browning looking at the proposal there to add a 3rd runway to Heathrow Airport in London. 22 minutes past 6 now. Let's take a look at the on-the-ground traffic here in Aotearoa. Running pretty smoothly in all of the major centres. Of course, a public holiday in Auckland would help that. No major traffic updates. Do let us know. Text 2101 if you see anything we should be aware of. Our main stories here on Morning Report. Well, 4 homes have been destroyed and at least 50 damaged after a tornado tore through the Northland town of Mangawhai over the weekend. In Canterbury, a critically injured person has been freed from the wreckage of a caravan after a tree fell on it early last night. And we're 2 years on from the Auckland floods. Figures show that in the past year, 1,500 more consents have been granted for houses to be built on floodplains in the city. 22 past 6 now. That is time to get through to our business reporter, Anand Zaki, who is standing by with the business news. Kia ora, Happy New Year, Anand Zaki. What is happening happening on the markets out there?
Kia ora, Ingrid. Yes, welcome back. Happy New Year to you as well. Wall Street's main indices closed lower last week, investors digesting a mixed bag of economic data and earnings reports, and they're preparing for a busy week filled with economic releases and a big one, the US Federal Reserve meeting. So the Dow fell 0.3%, S&P 500 also down 0.3%, and the Nasdaq about 0.5% lower. Local top 50 index starts the week at 13,025 after Friday's fall of 35 points or 0.3%, expecting a quiet trading day today with Auckland anniversary. And the New Zealand dollar, well, it's been through a heck of a ride over the past few weeks. It was near a 2-year low against the US about 3 weeks ago, but it's regained a bit of ground since, currently at 57.1 US cents and 90.4 Australian cents.
Okay, what about your main bulletin? 2024, not the best for the economy. Is the economy doing the whole 2025 new economy back better than ever?
Yeah, new year, new me, right?
Yeah.
2025. Economists say this year should be better, but the labour market might be a different story, certainly for the first 6 months of the year. We speak to ANZ. One company hoping to have a good 2025 is dairy company Synlait. You might remember they had a bit of a shocker of a year last year. And the hotel industry, well, they want tweaks to immigration law. All that and the markets for you just after 10 to 7.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Anan. It is 24 minutes past 6 now.
And let's go to the rural news now with Janina Schwaneka. Kia ora, good morning and welcome to Morning Report.
Good morning, Corin. How are you?
I'm very well. Pleased to be back, in fact. Now, the issue of methane-emitting cows in New Zealand has been, it's been a head-scratcher for many years, and there are still attempts to try and crack this nut.
Yes, well, a new research barn for dairy cattle will be built in Waikato later this year in efforts to breed cows that produce less methane. Livestock Improvement Corporation announced in early December a trial study had found bulls that were low methane emitters pass this trait on to their daughters. The study, in partnership with genetics company CRV and funded by the Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Research Centre, began in 2020, testing feed inputs and methane outputs on 20 bulls. This is now extended to more than 1,000. Chief Executive David Chin says it will build the new facility at its innovation dairy farm at Rukahia in Waipa over the next 6 to 7 months to measure heifers as they lactate.
The board have signed off investment into building a state-of-the-art barn to measure the performance of these cows when they're lactating. That'll be the last part of our trial. That's very, very promising. We hope to have it done in the next 6 to 7 months so we could measure the heifers as they lactate this year. So, yeah, we're cracking on into it, and it'll be good to see how those results come through.
The goal is to introduce a methane breeding value to all their artificial breeding bulls from late 2026. Now, the co-op wouldn't comment on the cost of the new barn, but good demand for artificial breeding saw the Livestock Improvement Corporation report a net profit after tax of $39.1 million for the 6 months to November, a nearly 35% increase on the same period last year.
Okay, now, very good. Fishers and hunters, of course, a lot of that going on at the moment. They are happy, are they, with the government's reshuffle last week?
They are. Industry group Fish and Game says it's pleased hunting and fishing will remain a government priority, just with a new face at the helm. The government's ministerial reshuffle announced this month will see the hunting and fishing portfolio, established by the coalition government, shifted from Minister Todd McClay to Minister James Meager of Rangitata. Fish and Game Chief Executive Karina Jordan has been on hunting trips with the new minister and says he's passionate about hunting and freshwater fishing.
Looking forward to working quite closely with him over the next term of government. We're really happy that with these portfolio reshuffles that they have retained this portfolio because we know that it's important for the country, it's important for hunters and anglers, and I think by retaining it, it's really demonstrated that this government coalition understands it's important to New Zealand as well.
Karina Jordan says the organisation's priorities this year include improving access for hunters and anglers to wild spaces, legislative reform, and building relationships with farmers and rural communities.
Now, there's a lot of cheap vegetables around at the moment. I, for one, am enjoying the radishes. How about you?
I am quite a big fan of all the lovely tomatoes, really.
Oh, yes.
Well, industry group Vegetables New Zealand says it's been a great weather for growing vegetables nationwide, meaning plentiful supplies. This also means prices are cheap for consumers at present. New Stats NZ figures show vegetable prices fell 11.5% from October to December and were down a total of 14.6% in 2024 compared to 2023. But the group's chair, John Murphy, says many growers are hurting at the moment, facing increasing production costs amid these low prices. He says the government needs to prioritise vegetable growing as a permitted activity in the new resource management legislation to better protect the sector and the supply of fresh and valuable produce. And we'll speak with more growers about how they're getting on in Midday Report.
Thank you very much. That's Jania Swanica there with your rural update this morning at 28 minutes past 6. Now, your weather. Going to be some scattered showers, strong winds in many parts of the country. Fine spells do return this afternoon, though. Some fairly good-looking temperatures in the north. Auckland 23, Tauranga 26, Hamilton 23. It's a bit cooler as we move further south. Wellington 17, Christchurch 18, Dunedin 16 with a bit of a southerly breeze. The warmest place at the moment is Waikato Bay on 20 degrees and the coldest is Tiana on 5.4.
Good to hear. It was so hot everywhere I went over the summer holidays. Just glorious weather every morning, and quite frankly, I was getting a little bit sick of it. But anyway, I don't think you had the same problem down there in Wellington, Corin.
Well, we had our moments.
You did? Yeah,
okay.
No,
it was good.
Coming up before 7 on Morning Report, Civil Defence Emergency Management Kaipara Controller John Burt. He will join us to discuss the response to the weekend's tornado in Mangawhai. Fonterra has taken to social media to reassure customers it is not using a feed additive which is designed to lower the climate impact of cows. And in business news, while the country is expected to start emerging out of a deep economic hole this year, don't expect the job market to improve just yet. Let's get through to the news now with Nicola Wright.
Drone footage has revealed the extent of the damage from a major storm that hit the Northland township of Mangawhai early yesterday. At least 50 houses are known to have been damaged by the strong winds, which locals have described as a tornado. The region's Fire and Emergency District Manager Wipari Henwood told Morning Report a drone survey has revealed further damage outside the epicentre, although the severity of it won't be as bad as in the area worst hit. He says council staff will be door-knocking today to establish how many people have had to evacuate. Kaipara's Civil Defence Controller John Burt expects it'll take some time for all the damage to be fully repaired.
It won't be a few days, it's likely to be weeks and months. Property owners will have to work with their insurers, obviously, around these repairs, and depending on the availability of contractors and the complexity of the repairs, look, it could be some time before they're all completed.
So far, 3 properties have been yellow stickered, restricting entry, and another's been white stickered, meaning it is damaged, but people can go inside. A complicated rescue lasting several hours eventually managed to free a person trapped when a tree fell on their caravan in North Canterbury last night. It happened in Balmoral, just south of Culverden. The person was critically injured and was taken to hospital about 10:30 last night. Fire and Emergency Shift Manager Simon Lyford says heavy machinery was needed to get them out, and a local contractor's digger and a farmer's tractor were brought in to help. 1,500 more houses were granted consent on floodplains in Auckland in the last year. Council data shows 2 years on from the Auckland Anniversary Day floods, the rate of consents granted in flood and other hazard zones remains unchanged. Auckland Councillor Richard Hills says the council has placed stricter requirements on such consents, including measures to protect against flood risk, even with 3.8 degrees of global warming. The Resource Management Act Minister Chris Bishop says a government direction due this year will create a nationally consistent approach to the risks posed by natural hazards. Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon have been accused of killing 22 people trying to return home. Lebanon's health ministry says more than 40 others were injured when Israeli forces opened fire in several locations. Israeli forces have missed today's ceasefire deadline for leaving southern Lebanon. A spokesperson for the UN mission in the area, Andrea Tenenti, says the situation there is worrying.
What we are seeing right now is still presence of IDF in several villages in the south of Lebanon, and that, of course, makes very difficult for the Lebanese army to be able to be redeployed. Today, of course, the escalation of violence is again increasing.
The Israeli military says it fired warning shots in multiple areas without saying if people had been hit. Oral hearings begin today of submissions on the Treaty Principles Bill. The bill received an unprecedented number of written submissions, and the Justice Committee is set to listen to 80 hours in total. The committee chair, National's James Meagher, says it's worked to ensure a broad range of views is put forward in the first sessions. South Korean prosecutors have formally charged the suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol with insurrection over his brief imposition of martial law. Mr. Yoon has largely refused to cooperate with the criminal investigation into his declaration last month. A court ruling at the weekend meant prosecutors had to make a decision on whether to charge or release him before today. Mr. Yoon is the first sitting president in South Korean history to be charged with a crime. That's the news.
On Our Changing World this week, we join a team in Queenstown who are using the smartest of traps to help capture predators.
Smarts tell us the difference between a possum and a non-possum. So I get a report saying you've got 20 possums across your network and you've got 5 non-possums. And because of the AI, we know the non-possums will be rodents.
Find and follow Our Changing World on your favourite podcast app, or join me, Claire Kincannon, Thursdays, 7:30pm on RNZ National.
Met Service regional forecasts now. The situation: weakening southwesterlies for Aotearoa, New Zealand, as a front approaches the South Island from the southwest tomorrow, while an area of high pressure covers the North Island. So for Northland today, it's partly cloudy, isolated showers clearing to fine in the east this morning and elsewhere this afternoon. Southwesterlies ease in the evening. Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, Rotorua, Waikato, Waitomo, Taupo and Taumarunui. Isolated showers clearing to fine late morning. Southwesterlies strong in exposed places, ease in the evening. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay fine apart from isolated showers clearing this evening. Southerlies strong in exposed places, easing then too. Taranaki, Taihape, Whanganui and Manawatu mostly cloudy with isolated showers inland, clearing and becoming fine this afternoon. Southwesterlies strong in exposed places, easing in the evening. Wairarapa, including Tararua District, Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast, Wellington. Showers may be heavy, clearing to fine this afternoon for Horowhenua to Wellington, and this evening for Wairarapa and Tararua. Southerly strong in exposed places, easing in the afternoon. Nelson's mainly fine, but isolated evening showers. Fresh or strong southwesterlies turning lighter northeasterly this afternoon. Bulla, Grey and Westland. Fine in Westland, a few showers elsewhere, but clearing to fine this morning or afternoon. Southwesterlies easing in the evening. Marlborough and Canterbury. Rain in Canterbury this morning, possibly heavy. Fine spells and isolated showers elsewhere, and then showers retreating to the Marlborough Ranges. Southwesterlies strong in exposed places, ease this afternoon. Fiordland, Otago and Southland, scattered showers. Could be heavy this morning, clearing this afternoon or evening, then fine. Southwesterlies ease tonight. Chatham Islands rain may be thundery, easing this afternoon though. Gale northerlies turn strong southwesterly around midday. Tomorrow's outlook: the North Island is mainly fine, but isolated afternoon showers in Northland and Auckland. The South Island Aopopo, isolated showers in the west and north. Rain in the south with a chance of thunderstorms at night. Mainly fine elsewhere. And Tuesday at Ratu at the Chathams, partly cloudy with showers clearing and strong southwesterlies easing. It's 24 minutes to 7.
Ngā mihi, thank you very much, Nicola. This is Morning Report on RNZ National. Nathan is here now to talk sport. Hi there, Nathan.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I watched a lot of sport over the break, but
you did?
you're telling me you didn't. Well, I sat on the couch and watched.
You watched some.
As opposed to like being sporty, I just absorb sport.
Yes, I was about to say I didn't, but then perhaps I didn't watch sport for what I would normally watch because I realised I did.
Yeah. Now the tennis, you were looking at the post-match interviews. God, they're quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to have a look at a couple of post-match interviews that have gone. I was really shining a light on it. And you know that you've really been beaten really badly in your post-match interview when your comment is, "I'm just not good enough," and you look really sad. And that's what Alexander Zverev did last night when he lost to Jannik Sinner. So Jannik Sinner won the Australian Open. Congratulations to him. That's 19 singles titles for him on the tour. 3 of those are majors. So that's his second Australian Open because he won it last year as well. Also, he won the US Open. Loves a hard court title. But he just beat Zverev just beat him. And I mean, look at the score, 6-3, 7-6, 6-3. So he beats him entirely, at straight sets. As well as that, he broke his serve and he broke his spirit by the sounds of it. Like Alexander Zverev was really low in there as well. So I thought that was quite an extraordinary comment to make, the I'm just not good enough. Considering when you're around high-performance athletes, that doesn't ever seem to be a thought that crosses their minds. Their thought seems to be, because their skill is coming up against a bump and then going, okay, right, brush that off, have another go, get in there to do it.
He's fallen short a couple of times though, hasn't he?
Has,
so it's the hurdle he can't quite get over.
It's the trying to beat that guy is where he is. Although, mind you, Roger Federer, I think, had similar statements when he was trying to beat Rafa on clay. And of course, should mention too that Madison Keys, congratulations to her. She played in Auckland. She won her first Grand Slam. She beat Ariana Sabalenka's 2-year reign in the Down Under. So that's good. And she beat Inga Swiatek in an incredible semi-final too.
Yeah,
So,
there were some entertaining games, particularly in the women's side of the tournament.
Also in England, this is interesting. It's racing carnival season there, so their racing trainers have come out saying they're going to boycott post-match interviews unless the television broadcasters front up by Saturday with £500,000. I was going to say pounds, but it would be pounds, wouldn't it? The Professional Racing Association, which was founded by someone, Peter Saville. He used to be the chairman of the British Horse Racing Authority. He's come up with this. They represent 170 trainers, and it's arriving just at the right time because this week is the biggest broadcasting week for horse racing over there. Sky Sports, ITV, they're showing Sandown and Musselburgh, Musselburgh from, I think it's later on this week. And they're just saying, oh, no, this is good because we think it would be a good way to raise money and we could donate it to various areas of the horse racing industry that might need it. It's tough now for everyone. And other people have figured out and gone, this does seem to come just 2 months after everyone discovered that the jockeys get paid for their interviews. And Saville's argument is that the trainers play just as big a role, if not bigger, in the sport being staged. So they want £500,000 that we're talking to no one. So if you were a big fan of the racing trainer interview, it could be a dying breed there.
Yeah, imagine that, having to live without that. Thank you very much, Nathan. That was Nathan with our sports chat for this morning, our first of the sports chats of the morning, 20 minutes to 7 now.
Now, more than 140 homes in Mangawhai could still have no power until this evening. Cordons have been put up around Old Waipu Road and remain in place because of fallen power lines after a tornado hit the town in the early hours of Sunday morning. These will likely stay in place, as I say, until this evening. Here's Fire and Emergencies Northern District Manager Wipari Henwood speaking to us earlier.
One 2-story place had the whole top story ripped off their house. A lot of houses with, trees still in the roofs. Quite a few of them, actually.
Well, joining us now is Civil Defence Emergency Management Kaipara Controller, John Burt. Hi, John.
Good morning, Corin.
Can you update us on the situation with any families that are out of their homes, yellow stickered buildings? What's the situation?
Yeah, so in terms of yellow stickers, there's 17 buildings that have yellow stickers and 9 have white. So white just means it's been assessed, but there's not significant damage. A yellow sticker means there's just restricted access to the building. So it's not a red sticker, so people are able to enter to do works and things like that. And about as many homes as were stickered were assessed and given no stickers, so the level of damage was so minor it didn't even require a sticker.
We heard from Wipari earlier that the extent of the damage goes a bit wider than that epicentre once they had a look at the drone footage, although it doesn't appear to be as bad. Are you aware of any people that are being yellow stickered further out?
Look, I don't have the details of where all the stickers were, but we assessed a wider area than just the old Waipu Road area. So there were some homes on Moy Street and also in Kagan Place, which have some damage as well. So,
has everybody got accommodation? Who's out?
Look, we had an 0800 number running yesterday for anybody that required assistance. We only received in the end one request, and that person was accommodated. So.
Were a few of these homes holiday homes? Were they holiday makers? Are you aware of that?
Look, there will have been some holiday houses or batches, but I think by the look of it, it's predominantly permanent residents that have been affected.
And this cordon, is this still necessary?
Yeah, look, the issue is, I think Pari mentioned this morning, is all the lines are still down on the ground. North Power did a great job on getting the lines and poles back up on Moore Street last night. So the power will be easy to restore in that area. But in Old Waipu Road, the more people that are moving in and out of the area is going to make it difficult for the lines company today, because they've got to pick up all those lines, join the breaks and get them back on the poles.
So what's your advice then to people in the area who are wanting to go and check things in homes or move around?
Yeah, look, I think if people can just stay away at this stage. We're going to have a rapid response team from Auckland Council coming up to join us this morning, and they're going to be going out door knocking and just trying to find out, what assistance any of the residents need, and we'd prefer to get it to them rather than have everybody coming and going and just impacting on the work that the lines company.
There'll be people worried though, won't there, that particularly if they've lost a roof and they want to get a tarpaulin on it and they're trying to protect their belongings.
Yes, look, I can understand with that frustration, but obviously, with lines on the ground, the advice is always to treat them as live, and so the more that we can, allow the lines company to get in there and make it all safe, the better, really.
So, what's your top priority today and this morning then?
Look, the priority today is restoring that power in that Old Waipu Road area, and as quickly as possible, reducing the disruption to people needing to come and go, and particularly contractors, as you say, that people want to get into help with the homes. I think the key thing is that before people get work underway, they also need to be speaking with their insurance company, getting photos and so forth. And the other one is, we'll be getting the rapid response team up into that area and talking to residents and seeing how we can assist them just in this period for the next few hours.
As the local Civil Defence Emergency Manager, I mean, there's some dispute as to whether they can be called a tornado. What's your assessment of this? I mean, it looks like one, doesn't it?
I'm not an expert on tornadoes and wind, but look, it's a significant damage that's been caused, so it doesn't really matter what you call it. There's
no, but I guess the point here is that I've seen footage of one a couple of years ago, and people will be worried about this sort of weather event striking the area. Is it prone to these events? Something to do with the geography? I mean, what's your understanding?
Look, I've been involved in emergency management here in Kaipara for almost 14 years, and look, I think from memory there's been a couple of these things happen over the time. They do tend to be more on the east coast and the Mangawhai Waipu area, and I think that's to do with the convergence of the air around the moist water off the coast and so forth. But look, I'm not a meteorologist. They'll have
no, but it must be alarming, and it is alarming, I think, people when they can see that the top story of a house gets removed, that something serious is going on here.
Yes, yeah. Look, I think to keep it into perspective, they're relatively rare events. They do happen throughout New Zealand, at least one a year from my observation. But they're not normally that widespread. But from time to time they do happen. We don't have the big tornadoes like they do in the United States, obviously.
Thankfully, we've got plenty of other natural hazards to worry about, let alone tornadoes. Thank you very much, Civil Defence Emergency Management Kaipara Controller John Burt there with that update. We'll have more on the Mangawhai situation throughout the program here on Morning Report. It's 14 minutes to 7.
And yes, you are listening to Morning Report on RNZ National with me, Ingrid Hipkiss, and Corin Dan. Now, Fonterra has taken to social media to reassure customers that it's not using a feed additive which is designed to lower the climate impact of cows. Now, the dairy giant's been caught up in misinformation around the use of Bovia, which is a supplement that shrinks the planet-heating gases burped by cows. Climate change correspondent Eloise Gibson reports.
Just before Christmas, BBC's Inside Science podcast reported on a new social media trend.
People have been posting videos of themselves pouring milk away in protest over a new additive that's being tested in cow feed.
See what that is? Yeah. Arla, you're going down the drain, mate.
Food scientists explained the product had been tested as safe and wasn't present in the milk, but not before the posts got millions of views. Bovia is the first commercially available product to slash the potent heating gas from farm animals. Trials dating back to 2015 show 30% reductions in feedlot and barn-raised animals. But trials by Fonterra and others show it's much less effective on pasture-grazing cows and sheep because animals have to eat it mixed in every bite of food. After false rumours Fonterra was using the product, it tweeted that food safety and quality was its number one priority and Bovia hadn't been approved for use on New Zealand farms. The dairy giant wouldn't be interviewed on this, but told RNZ it wants to reassure people its products are safe. Other methane-cutting products are coming, and Fonterra is planning to use them to get a 7% reduction in methane by 2030. Florence van Dyk, Head of Sustainability at New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, says food exporters have to show they'll slash emissions to win lucrative contracts.
Multinationals are the greatest driver. So companies like Danone, Nestle, Mars, Tesco and McDonald's are mandating that their suppliers measure their carbon emissions. And most of the time they're actually going one step further, so requiring suppliers to disclose carbon reduction plans.
She says it's not just the EU and UK asking.
These global retailers are applying that European standard to their operations globally. McDonald's in China requiring carbon reduction plans from meat and dairy suppliers, which of course includes New Zealand exporters.
New Zealand company Ruminant Biotech has developed a small metal capsule or bolus which delivers a methane squashing medicine called bromoform straight to an animal's gut. It's on track to be ready this year. John Roach, Chief Science Advisor to the Ministry for Primary Industries, says there's high trust in New Zealand's food safety system and most consumers will accept additives that make it through.
Food is deeply personal. And we've seen that, as people have protested in the 1990s, even around genetically modified foodstuffs.
He says companies using Bovia haven't stopped, suggesting they believe consumers are overall in favour.
Our food system is approximately a third of the world's greenhouse gas footprint. If markets are demanding it and the processors are reading those signals, and they are, New Zealand farmers have always risen to the challenge.
Low methane cow breeds are on the horizon, and Fonterra is also targeting methane reductions from farming changes such as improving feed. Although the government delayed pricing methane until as late as 2030, consumer pressure could see farmers use these options sooner. How many remains to be seen.
Well, that was our climate change correspondent Eloise Gibson, with Fonterra having to, combat a misinformation campaign on social media around the use of Bovia. Sounded like a good idea, shrinking the planet heating gases burped up by cows. We're not using it, though. It doesn't work with grass-fed dairy, apparently. It is 10 minutes to 7 now. Let's take a little whip around your morning newspapers. The New Zealand Herald leads with a new study into child hunger. Findings there suggesting kids who are hungry at school end up years behind their peers in key subjects.
The Waikato Times has a story on a Hamilton motelier who collected more than $26 million in taxpayer cash. That was during the emergency housing boom, who now faces liquidation for 3 Hamilton motel businesses over unpaid taxes.
Political heavyweights turn up the heat on Treaty Bill. That is the headline on the Post, with the Select Committee scheduled to hear from 50 submitters today. We'll be speaking to our political reporter as well about exactly what to expect over the day. David Seymour, I think he is actually the first person who'll be speaking.
Yes, which is a little bit unusual.
Yeah.
And there's an extraordinary number of people that want to give oral submissions. How are they going to fit them in? They've got sort of 10-minute slots. And there's just packed in today on this opening day. So good luck to them on that. We'll talk to Lillian Hanley, for an update on who they are and how that's going to play out. But it's going to be quite fascinating to watch because that is a lot of people with a lot to say in a very short space of time. The press reports the future of food trucks operating at the Christchurch Arts Centre may be at risk due to a revised resource consent application.
And finally, in the Otago Daily Times, the Dunedin City Council is looking at options to reduce the flood risk in South Dunedin. It is 9 minutes to 7 now. You're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. Let's take a look at the traffic around the Motu. No traffic issues in Auckland this morning due to the public holiday. Should also mention it's Northland anniversary day as well. So we don't want these Aucklanders, dominating the public holiday. It's Auckland and Northland Anniversary Day today. In Wellington, traffic starting to build for those coming in from Upper Hutt, taking around 35 minutes there. If you are heading in from Kapiti, expect around a 41-minute journey, and in Christchurch, 25 minutes heading in from Rolleston and 28 minutes from Rangiora into the central city there. Right, let's get through to the business news now with Anand Zaki.
Thank you, Ingrid. Atamario. The country should start emerging out from a deep economic hole this year, but don't expect the jobs market to turn anytime soon. Last year saw the country fall into the worst recession outside of COVID since the 1990s, as growth went sharply backwards in the middle of the year, with unemployment rising. Economists expect positive growth to resume from the final quarter of 2024. But ANZ senior economist Miles Workman says the return to growth will be gradual, but that doesn't mean unemployment will immediately start coming down.
One key point worth noting here is the labour market probably still has a bit of softening to come, at least over the first half of 2025. So typically the labour market is the last thing to move in the economic cycle. So you start with interest rates, that translates into economic activity, and then that translates into demand and supply for labour. Essentially, just accounting for those typical lags, you would expect the unemployment rate to continue to rise a little bit further from here.
ANZ expects unemployment to lift to around 5.5% by the middle of the year before starting to fall slowly. Well, one company hoping to thrive in 2025 is dairy company Synlait after its horror year in 2024. Last week it forecast a half-year underlying profit between $58 million and $63 million, about 3 times that of a year ago. The future of the company hung in the balance last year until it secured a rescue package from its 2 major shareholders, Bright Dairy and A2 Milk. Synlait Acting Chief Executive Tim Carter says its restructuring and refinancing are delivering, but there's plenty to do.
We've got work to do. It's hard work, but it's exciting work. And we've got the first half, which will be in the black, and now our job is to get to the second half and get to a full year. And further build confidence in our farmer suppliers and in the market that Synlait is back on track and our performance is repeatable.
Tim Carter says relations with key customer A2 Milk are stronger, and it's making progress in convincing suppliers who gave notice to quit to stay in the fold, part of which is an extra incentive payment. The hotel industry says immigration settings need to be tweaked to give international chains more flexibility to manage their immigrant workforce. The new Minister for Economic Growth, Nicola Willis, is hinting at changes to visitor visa requirements to boost visitor numbers, but Hotel Council Director James Doolan says the immigration policy will need some fixing first.
We have groups of hotels in New Zealand that simply aren't able to transfer immigrant workers between hotels, even if the immigrants themselves want flexibility in their jobs. So there's some technical work that could be done allowing large, well-organised international employers flexibility with labour. That's one example of things that could be improved.
James Doolan says the hotel industry has not fully recovered from the prolonged COVID lockdowns, a view shared by other hospitality and tourist industry groups. Well, turning to the markets, Wall Street's main indices closed lower last week, investors digesting a mixed bag of economic data and earnings reports, and they're preparing for a week filled with important economic data and, of course, a Federal Reserve meeting. The Dow and the S&P 500 both fell 0.3%, and the Nasdaq about 0.5% lower. Local top 50 index starts the week at 13,025 after Friday's fall of 35 points or 0.3%. Expect some local market activity to be subdued by holidays in Auckland and Australia. It's Australia Day today. The New Zealand dollar regained a bit of ground against the US at 57.1 cents, also at 90.4 Australian cents, 45.7 pence, 54.4 euro cents, 89.1 yen, and 4.14 yuan. Brent crude oil up about 20 cents to $72.5 a barrel. And gold is flat, $2,771 an ounce. That is close to a record. In other business news this morning, two large national retail chains say it's remained a struggle to do business. KMD Brands, with its Kathmandu, Oboz and Rip Curl brands, say second quarter group sales were up 1.7% on a year ago, which partially offset the near 6% fall in the preceding I'll be back with a market update around 8:30.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, New Zealand. You're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. Ko Corin Dan tēnā.
Ko Ingrid Aho. It is Rahina Monday, January the 27th. It is Auckland Anniversary Day, but also the top half of the North Island is celebrating that anniversary too with a public holiday. Top stories this morning. Well, 4 homes have been destroyed and at least 50 damaged after a tornado tore through the Northland town of Mangawhai at the weekend.
In Canterbury, a person was critically injured last night after a tree fell on a caravan.
1,500 more houses have been granted consent on floodplains in Auckland in the past year.
And from the lavish Stade de France in Cook's Garden to Cook's Garden in Whangarei, Olympic gold medalist Hamish Kerr was back in action this weekend.
And your weather this Monday, scattered showers and strong winds for many parts of the country. Fine spells set to return in the afternoon.
RNZ News at 7. Kia ora, good morning. Ko Nicola Wright tēnei. The Kaipara Mayor says yesterday's high winds left a very selective trail of destruction in the small Northland coastal town of Mangawhai. Locals described the storm, which hit about 3 in the morning, as a tornado. 2 people were hospitalised and at least 50 properties damaged. Craig Jepson says at least 4 homes were destroyed. The damage centred on a residential area primarily built within the past decade. He says some of the badly damaged properties are next door to homes that were entirely untouched.
But it's really surprising how, one house is undamaged and the next one's almost destroyed. So the power of that tornado has whipped through there, but it's been almost selective.
Craig Jepson says it was a terrifying ordeal for some residents. One local, Zoe Liebeck, describes the moment the storm struck.
I just woke up to a very loud noise, which I'm not sure if the window's smashing, but I've got a rabbit and he lives out on the deck, so I was literally out on the deck at 3 o'clock trying to hold the cage down and everything else I could hold down. Yeah, it was pretty scary actually.
Zoe Liebeck says the storm smashed windows and brought down power lines in her street. Meanwhile, Kaipara's Civil Defence Emergency Manager is urging residents of Old Waipu Road to respect the cordons that remain in place due to downed power lines. Kaipara Controller John Burt told Morning Report he understands it's frustrating, but asks homeowners to stay away. He says the top priority is restoring power to the street today and says Auckland Council's rapid response team will be door-knocking this morning to find out what people need. Mr Burt says 17 homes have been yellow stickered, meaning access is restricted due to damage. No homes have been red stickered. The weather complicated the rescue of a person trapped for several hours when a tree fell on their caravan in North Canterbury last night. It happened in Balmoral, just south of Culverden. A local contractor's digger and a farmer's tractor were used to free the critically injured person, who was taken about 90 kilometres to hospital in Christchurch by an ambulance. The bad weather meant a rescue helicopter couldn't be sent. Council data shows 1,500 more houses have been granted consent on floodplains in Auckland in the last year. 2 years on from the Auckland Anniversary Day floods, the rate of consents granted in flood and other hazard zones remains unchanged. Kate Newton reports.
Auckland Councillor Richard Hill says he understands it's triggering for communities that were flooded to see new builds going up. Mr Hill says since the floods, though, the council has placed stricter requirements on such consents, including measures to protect against flood risk even with 3.8 degrees of global warming. Resource Management Act Minister Chris Bishop says a government direction due later this year will create a nationally consistent approach to addressing the risks posed by natural hazards.
Engineers say polystyrene blocks used in the foundations of 4 state homes floated when water reached them, causing the houses to lift in the Auckland Anniversary flooding 2 years ago. 2 engineers contacted by RNZ say polystyrene blocks in the foundations became buoyant when water reached them because there wasn't enough weight to keep the houses stable. But Kaingora says the Mangere houses were built to the building code and extreme rainfall was to blame for their damage. It says no errors were found in its flotation checks, and there's no evidence the material in the foundations caused the damage. Jordan's foreign minister has strongly rejected proposals by the US president for more than 1 million Palestinians to be moved from Gaza to Arab countries. Ayman Safadi says Jordan is for Jordanians and Palestinian territories for Palestinians. He says his country's views on forced displacement will not change. Donald Trump claims such a move would allow a clean-out of Gaza and clear the way for reconstruction. Meanwhile, 1 person is dead in reported Israeli fire on Palestinians trying to head back to their homes in the north of Gaza Strip. Israel is refusing to allow residents in until Hamas releases a female civilian hostage as part of the ceasefire deal. A right-leaning economic commentator wants the government to look at lowering company tax as part of its growth strategy. The Prime Minister last week revealed the government's plans to attract foreign investment at a level similar to that seen in Ireland. But Michael Riddell says that country has a clear advantage.
They've got a company tax rate of 12.5%. Company tax rate in Singapore is also pretty low. We have one of the highest company tax rates of any OECD country. And that's just not even mentioned in any of the stuff that you hear from the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance.
Michael Riddell says the government should also aim to curb immigration and cut foreign investment regulations so only national security concerns can limit it. Oral hearings for the Treaty Principles Bill begin today, with the Justice Select Committee set to listen to 80 hours of submissions in total. Here's our political reporter Lillian Hanley.
The bill received an unprecedented number of written submissions, and Chair James Meagher says the committee worked to ensure there's a broad range of views heard in the first sessions. He says it's not uncommon for select committees to decide their own procedures for how to make a selection when there's no capacity to hear everyone that wishes to make an oral submission. The committee has agreed each political party will make a selection based on a range of individuals and organisations from different backgrounds, with a focus on youth and on academics. David Seymour, who's in charge of the bill, will be first up this morning.
That's the news.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Nicola. Coming up shortly on Morning Report, we'll get more on the clean-up effort in Mangawhai. We'll hear from people affected and also speak to authorities about the power getting put on and all that sort of admin, which they are busily working on today. First, though, Nathan is in with sport. Hi there, Nathan.
Hello.
Now, the Australian Open men's final, a pretty one-sided affair in the end, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, it was. Yannick Sinner underlining why he is the world's best men's player currently by securing back-to-back Australian Open titles. It was a merciless victory over Alexander Zverev. The Italian top seed delivered in the decisive moments to win in straight sets against the second seed.
How I entered the court, trying to be quite aggressive in the beginning, this gave me then the confidence that I feel to the ball in a certain way, and how I handled every situation on the court, not only today in the final but in general was very nice.
The Black Ferns Sevens have been beaten 28-26 by Australia in the final of the Perth round of the World Series. The Ferns still lead the series by 2 points from Australia. The All Black Sevens beat Kenya 19-12 to finish 9th in the men's competition, with Argentina beating Australia in the final. Auckland FC are back on top of the men's A-League after a last-gasp 1-0 win over Western Sydney Wanderers in Parramatta, and the Breakers are out of playoff contention in the Australian NBL after losing 94-78 at the Adelaide 36ers. Koina, ngā pūrongo hakinekina. That's your sports news. Nicola's back with weather after this.
Your complete wrap of the day starts at 5 p.m. with me, Lisa Owen.
What makes a good sausage roll?
Oh, the right mix of meat and pastry.
Choose yourself a theme song.
Live like you were dying, Tim McGraw.
What would you expect in terms of repercussions?
The mayor will probably reflect and think that's not what I wanted to be news on Checkpoint.
Have you checked out?
Not at all. I'm talking to the important people in the New Zealand media.
Quick questions. Can you give me some quick answers, please? Checkpoint. Fair and frank news and interviews on RNZ National.
Forecast from Met Service to midnight now. Northland to Waitomo, including Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, Taupo and Taumarunui. Showers clearing to fine in most places this morning, but Northland this afternoon. Taranaki to Manawatu, including Taihape, scattered showers clear this afternoon. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, cloudy at times, isolated showers till evening. For Wairarapa, Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington, there are showers, maybe heavy, clearing and becoming fine this afternoon in the west, and this evening for Wairarapa. Nelson, Bulla, Grey and Westland, isolated showers for Bulla and Grey until afternoon, then in Nelson this evening, otherwise fine. Marlborough and Canterbury, rain or showers mostly clear this afternoon, but linger for Marlborough. Fiordland, Otago and Southland, scattered showers, could be heavy this morning, clearing this afternoon or evening. Chatham Islands, rain with the chance of thunder, easing this afternoon. In the main centres, Tāmaki, Makaurau, Auckland is fine apart from some cloud this morning. Southwesterly strong in exposed places, easing in the evening and a high of 23 degrees. Tauranga fine, but the chance of a morning shower. Southwesterlies ease from evening 26. In Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, it's fine. There may be a shower this morning. Southwesterlies ease in the evening 23. Te Whanganui Ataro, Wellington, a few showers, could be heavy, clearing to fine in the afternoon. Strong southerlies ease in the evening 17. Ōtautahi, Christchurch, rain may be heavy, clearing to fine this afternoon. Strong southwesterlies ease this evening, 18. And in Ōtepoti, Dunedin, a few showers clearing in the evening. Fresh southwesterlies ease then too. 16 degrees the high today for Dunedin. It's 7:09.
Ngā mihi, thank you very much, Nicola. And this is Morning Report on RNZ National. Well, the clean-up in Mangawhai is continuing today after a devastating storm struck the town overnight on Saturday. 50 houses were damaged. Power poles were knocked down as well when wind struck the Northland town around 3 a.m. on Sunday morning. 4 homes have been destroyed. Others had their roofs ripped off. There's debris everywhere. Power poles also down and trees snapped like twigs. Alan Johnson lives in Orewa but has a house in Mangawhai. He spoke to our reporter Peter de Graaf and told him that his daughter Tina was hospitalised after the storm completely destroyed the upper story where she'd been sleeping.
The top floor is gone, but every room is damaged. It basically is probably a write-off, I would think.
Yeah. You were saying your daughter was home at the time?
Yeah, she was sleeping in the top room.
Which is gone?
It's gone.
How did she get out, Alan?
We don't know. We basically know that she survived the tornado coming over. Because there was nothing there, she escaped onto that carport, jumped down, and then of course there was rescue of people here. So that's as much as I know.
And how is she now?
She's in Auckland Hospital and waiting surgery. She's got lacerations and broken bones.
Nick Beartooth said the storm broke nearly every window in his home and concrete tiles have punctured the roof. He describes here the moment when the tornado struck.
Yeah, in about 10 to 3 at night, the wind and rain just stopped and had a really eerie sort of feeling, and then out of nowhere we heard it kind of sound like a turbine kind of turning on and getting louder and cranking louder and louder, and yeah, before you know it you could hear our outdoor furniture smashing the glass through our kitchen and various other windows. So yeah, it's quite a horrific sound. Again, one I never wish to hear again or experience anyway. So
Now, more than 140 homes in Mangawhai could still have no power right through until this evening. Civil Defence Emergency Management Kaipara Controller John Burt says cordons are still in place around Old Waipu Road.
Look, the priority today is restoring that power in that Old Waipu Road area, and as quickly as possible, reducing the disruption to people needing to come and go, and particularly contractors, as you say, that people want to get into help with the homes. I think the key thing is that before people get work underway, they also need to be speaking with their insurance company, getting photos and so forth. And the other one is, we'll be getting the rapid response team up into that area and talking to residents and seeing how we can assist them just in this period for the next few hours.
Well, resident Grant Noonan was awake when the tornado struck his home. He joins us now. Kia ora, good morning, Grant. Some pretty remarkable stories we're hearing there. Tell us yours. You were awake.
Yeah, I was awake I was awake a little bit before it struck, and it was a bit eerie. It's sort of the wind was coming up. We had a flagpole. I was thinking of taking the flag down and going out and getting it down, but lying in bed, it sort of was an eerie feeling. Things started moving sideways and back and forth, and then boom, it's like a truck at our house. Unfortunately, the neighbours' concrete tiles all flew off their house and went through the roof of ours, about 55 holes. The side of the house, the top of the house, all our pergolas are gone, front fence. Yeah, quite disastrous.
So you thought, I better get out there and sort the flag out in case that goes AWOL. And it was obviously a lot worse than that.
Yeah, I've done it once before with the high winds. I've got a flagpole from the 60th, and we put the New Zealand flag out for a long weekend and Warriors, et cetera. And I was lying there thinking, that wind's starting to pick up. I'd better put that flagpole in case it bends, but it's more than bent now. It's gone.
The whole lot's gone. Okay, what about the other damage to the house? And what did you think when you heard that wind coming through? Did you think straight away tornado, or you had no idea?
I sort of I suspected tornado pretty quickly. It was you hear these stories, but the concrete tiles coming through, some of them they've gone across the road, across neighbours' houses and stuff. Whatever they hit, they would have been 5 kg, 8 kg each. Whatever they hit, they destroyed. They buried themselves 6 inches into the lawn. They went through all my pool fences, my pool shed, just gone. Everything it hit. Cars across the road destroyed it. I mean, if we didn't have the pergolas over our windows that took most of the hits, I mean, it would have come through our windows. But it was horrific. I mean, my wife woke up screaming. Once it was quick, it was violent, it was loud. How our windows, it felt like the windows wanted to suck out.
And after it calmed, how long did it take to calm down? What did you do then?
Look, there's probably a couple of minutes, to be honest. It was probably even less, to be honest. I'm trying to think now. Once it calmed down, it was eerie. It was gone. And I was still my undies, actually walking outside. I went over and checked a couple of neighbours, got an elderly man across the road and a solo mum next door. And people started walking around with torches at night, and no one really put a lot on. It was quite freaky. And it was just disbelief and people trying to check, and just, every time you shone your torch on something, it was just horrific damage. It was a really freaky experience, to be honest.
Right, so what you got once you got some clothes on and day broke, what is the damage there now in the situation? Were you able to stay in your house?
Yeah, we stayed in our house. We were lucky. When day broke, we heard the fire engines slowly driving around. We walked out the front and had to talk to the firemen. They told us how bad it really was, especially in Old Waipu Road, which is behind us. It was horrible. Everything had gone. Chairs had gone. The tables had flown. Trampoline was upside down on another flagpole next to us. Our trees at the back had blown. It was pretty devastating, to be honest.
So you've obviously had a chance to speak to some of those neighbours and others in the community. What is the priority for you now and for other members of the community, do you think?
I think the priority for us is we need help to clean up even more. We've cleaned up our section and 3 neighbours. People have got tarps over their roof. The wind's coming up today and it's overcast and the tarps are blowing around. There's piles of rubbish everywhere, and we're trying to find out if the council are going to help with some skip bins, or do we have to get it to the dump? Is the dump open? Stuff is blown away again because the winds have picked up, as I said before. So I think we just really need a bit more information and help of how to get rid of all this rubbish. We're waiting for insurance contact, whether we can go ahead. We don't know what to do.
Okay. Yeah, a bit of information to get there. What about power? Do you have power at your house?
Yes, we reckon we lost power for probably about 4 or 5 hours, and it came back on our end. Some of the older Mangawhai era is still out of power. I believe they said it could be up to 1 to 2 weeks. We don't know if that's a rumour or not at this stage.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. I do hope you find your flagpole, Grant. You need to get it up there for the Warriors season. That'll be with us before we know it. Appreciate your time this morning. That was Mangawhai resident Grant Noonan. One of those, I mean, they've all seemed to have remarkable stories about this tornado. We'll try and get some of those answers about the power and how the council can help as well. We'll be speaking to officials throughout the program. 7:17 now.
Yeah, let's go to our reporter Finn Blackwell, who's at the cordon at Mangawhai. Hi, Finn. Just talk us through this cordon. Has it shrunk a little bit? What is the exact cordon at the moment?
Morning, Corin. Well, I'm at the corner of Old Waipu Road, and now this road has been entirely closed off. It's a no-exit road, goes all the way up the hill and loops around there to a little cul-de-sac, but it is strictly blocked off. There are safety cones blocking the ways into the road. I've seen a few residents, I assume, coming out from the drive there, but in terms of traffic going through, it's completely blocked off, and it's not any surprise why. I can see significant damage, to say the least. There are houses that are missing their roofs, power pylons down. It's really devastating.
Just talk us through. It sounds like there's still a lot of, people have done a big job yesterday to try and clean up this rubbish, but obviously with the power lines and this type of thing, there's still quite a lot to do. Is that what you can see?
Indeed, it will be a while before all of this is cleaned up. Even on my way in, I saw fences down, trees down. There's already some arbiters here getting ready to chop down extra trees that are threatening the road. I can see just before we've had a Kaipara District Council vehicle come through with a power generator, so it looks like they might be working to get that power back on. But in terms of the actual damage, there's a number of properties here that have been yellow stickered. There are a number of properties here that have had windows, roofs smashed, fences smashed. I saw a tiny home that looked like it had just been picked up and sort of thrown into part of the guttering there. So it's going to be a while before all of this is cleaned up.
Yeah, this power situation is obviously a concern about how quickly it can come back on. Are you able to update us on that? I'm seeing some reports here that it's hopeful that the power would be restored to Moya Street and Old Waipu Road at 5 p.m. That's from North Power. But obviously, with those lines across driveways, they're moving pretty cautiously.
Yes, indeed. That's what we've heard. North Power saying that Moya Road is still without power. Old Waipu Road as well, one of the most affected roads here in Mangawhai. Going to be a while before that power comes back on, but crews are working to get it restored as quickly as possible.
And yellow stickered buildings too, 17 of them. What's interesting is that the drones went up this morning. We heard from Fire and Emergency that the damage is a little bit wider than initially thought, although the outer, away from the epicentre, it's not quite as bad. But there's actually going to have to be quite a bit of assessment done, isn't there?
Indeed, there is damage on Moya Road as well. I drove past there just before, and again, a few fences smashed in, a few trees blocking driveways. I saw some people trying to lift a mailbox that had fallen out. And again, Waipu Road is truly devastated. Some of these houses will need to undergo significant reconstruction, if not be bowled and rebuilt all over again. It's going to be a while until this recovery is fixed, and I think it's going to leave a lot of people, as we heard just before, asking what's next.
Just find anybody out and about yet, or is it still too early?
Well, when I got here, it was raining, so people have sort of scattered and found what shelter that they can. I've seen a few people. I'm yet to talk to them just yet, but what we have heard from residents is that the devastation looks like a war zone. That's how they've described it. People talking about the cleanup, concerned about how big it is, but also saying that they just need to get cracking and get it done.
Indeed. Thank you very much for the update, Finn Blackwell, who is at the cordon in Mangawhai this morning, 21 minutes past 7.
Well, let's get more now from what the government might be able to do to help the people in Mangawhai. Northland's MP says the government will step in to help where it can. Grant McCullum joins us now. Kia ora, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Ingrid.
What sort of support, or has any support been requested or offered by central government so far?
To date, there's been no specific report requested. I'm keeping close contact with the organisers of the coordinators of the event, local council and so forth, and feeding that back through to the Minister, Simeon Brown, who's acting in this case, because Mark Mitchell's overseas. And we've just come off the latest updated briefing, and things have been pretty quiet overnight. And you've just been listening to the report. Just a couple of little corrections. There was only 9 yellow stickered buildings, and there were 17 white stickered, was the slight update there. We're encouraging people this morning, the key message is please get in touch with the insurance companies and talk to them before you start ripping into tidying up things, because they might need to come and make assessments and things like that. So really, really important that people do contact their insurance companies this morning.
White stickers, what are those?
That just means, effectively, that means that the building inspecting team that did the initial inspections yesterday called into the house. Some of these cases, the people weren't there. It was just to say, look, we've been here, we've checked the house. That's basically what that means.
Right, okay. People, well, as you say, will be keen to start getting in and tidying up. Some of them, I guess there are cordons in place. Do we know when those might be lifted where people can go back?
Yeah, actually, we've just been talking just about that specific issue, where they hope to move the cordons back a bit through the morning in various parts of Old Waipu Road and on Moya Street and on Inslee Street, because it just depends on the power company, basically. There's still lines down in places, and please, I'd like to reiterate, please treat these lines as live at all times. One of the things we found out yesterday is, and I think they've got this sorted now, but with solar panels in action, they can feed back into lines when the sun comes up. So That's just something to be aware of. Just please treat them as live at all times, but they are very conscious that people, as soon as they're able, they'll be moving the cordons back so people can come and go freely.
Okay, and do you have any latest update on when power might be fully restored?
Yes, I've just been communicating with the Chief Operating Officer for North Power. He said they're still on target for 5 o'clock this afternoon to get everything done. The crews are there now working, so they're doing a great job. Apparently, it looks like most of the poles are all up. Now there's just all the lines. And unfortunately, because some people took it into their mind to cut some of the lines yesterday across their driveway, that just means it takes a bit longer.
Right. One of the people we've spoken to, one of the residents we spoke to this morning, said they were unsure about whether they were going to get help from the local government help in terms of the clean up with skip bins and that type of thing. Do you have any information about that?
Yes, I can give some information on that. In the affected areas, if people put all their damage and all the rubbish and all the damaged things on their berms outside their houses, the council will coordinate them be picked up, and it will be at no charge. The council will carry that cost. That was straight out of the meeting this morning.
Okay. Appreciate your time this morning. That is Northland MP Grant McCallum there. It is 24 minutes past 7.
Yeah, that's interesting about solar panels. I'd be interested to see what our listeners think about that. I mean, there's a few issues there with power going back into the grid from solar-powered houses and the complexities there with the potential, I suppose, for electric shocks.
Of course, yeah,
because
because it's not centrally controlled, is it? Mm.
So there's some issues there, no doubt, that need to be worked through. Okay, we're going to stay with wind and weather, because in Canterbury, a person was freed from the wreckage of a caravan last night after a tree fell on the vehicle. Now, emergency services arrived at the scene in Balmoral, just south of Culverden. That was about 7:20. And they found a large tree lying across the caravan. Now, the incident occurred at the Balmoral Recreation Reserve camping ground. Fire and Emergency Shift Manager Simon Lyford says a digger and a local farmer's tractor were brought in to help remove the tree. St John Ambulance had been treating the patient while they were trapped. Efforts to get a rescue helicopter to the incident, that was unsuccessful. Had to be stood down due to that bad weather. Of course, there was some thunderstorm alerts for that North Canterbury area rolling through yesterday. The person was freed just before 10 p.m. St John Ambulance said the patient had critical injuries. They were taken to Christchurch Hospital by ambulance about 90 kilometres away. We'll have more on this story as it becomes available. 26 minutes past 7. Traffic-wise, well, as you can imagine, things are running pretty smoothly in Auckland. If you're sleeping in this morning, enjoy that. Enjoy your public holiday. In Wellington, There is a little bit of traffic for those commuting in from Upper Hutt, taking about 42 minutes at the moment. And those heading in from Kapiti, it'll be about 47 minutes. In Christchurch, traffic is light from Ralston, 26 minutes, while those commuting from Rangiora, it is building up, currently taking 33 minutes. You're listening to Morning Report.
Well, 1,500 more houses have been granted consent to be built on floodplains in Auckland. This is just over the past year. It is 2 years on from the Auckland Anniversary Day floods, which destroyed and damaged thousands of properties. The rate of consents granted in flood and other hazard zones, though, remains unchanged. In-depth reporter Kate Newton has more.
Auckland Council's own data shows it's granted consent to nearly 3,000 new houses in floodplains since January 2023, half of those in the past year. This time last year, Auckland Councillor Richard Hills told RNZ he found it frustrating that new builds were still going up in flood zones with little recourse under the Resource Management Act to prevent consents. But Mr Hills, who chairs the Council's Policy and Planning Committee, says since then the Council's placed stricter requirements on people seeking permission to build in flood zones.
There's this sort of 3.8 degree of warming measurement which requires consent holders to prove that they can withhold a flood if the world warms to 3.8 degrees, so pretty extensive.
He says he understands it's triggering for communities that were flooded to see new builds going up.
Often what they don't see is stronger requirements around flooding. So not all is lost. That people, if they see housing popped up, it doesn't necessarily mean it's unsafe.
Mr Hills says the council's also seeking permission from the government to rezone certain areas that are exposed to flooding and other hazards. He says that will be controversial, but the council has to act to prevent long-term social and financial costs.
We're spending, upwards of $2 billion collectively with the government and ratepayers, who are the same people, taxpayers and ratepayers, to buy out almost 1,200 homes. We cannot afford as a city to continually go around buying out properties every time there's a disaster.
The later stage of the government's plan to reform the Resource Management Act will include a national direction to councils about building in natural hazard zones. RMA Minister Chris Bishop said in a written statement the direction would include a nationally consistent approach to addressing the risks posed by natural hazards, including climate change. Professor Bruce Glavovich, a natural hazards planning expert at Massey University, says it will take more than that to prevent ongoing development in hazard zones.
We've got a housing shortage and affordability issues. So there's a tremendous necessity to create opportunities for new affordable housing. And so we find ourselves tempted to compromise in some of those location decisions.
Professor Glavovich says densification in existing areas is one answer, but it needs to be well planned and not occur in areas that are already exposed to hazards.
That was our in-depth reporter Kate Newton. Do let us know what you think about this issue. It was, on the face of it, it is surprising that they are issuing consents in those floodplains. The council, though, is saying that they will have new regulations. Those houses will be built to withstand flooding, and of course, central government is going to come up with some regulations. They are still to come. But yeah, let us know. Do you think it's a good idea? Do we need the space? Let us know your thoughts. Text 2101, or you can email morningreport.co.nz as well. It is 7:30 now on Morning Report. Coming up before 8 here, US President Donald Trump says, well, he'd like to see Palestinians in Gaza leave the Strip and be taken in by other Arab nations, including Jordan and Egypt. Oral hearings for the Treaty Principles Bill begin just after 8 this morning in about half an hour's time. And this weekend, Hamish Kerr had his first event since winning the Olympic golf in Paris last year at the mighty Cook's Gardens in gold, not golf. He was back at the mighty Cook Gardens in Whanganui. And now with the headlines, here's Nicola Wright.
A Mangawhai resident says the tornado-like storm that struck early yesterday felt like a truck hitting his house. The Northland town was hit by high winds in the early hours, damaging 50 houses and knocking down power poles, power lines and trees. Grant Noonan was awake when it began and says it was quick, violent and loud. He told Morning Report the concrete tiles from his neighbour's house, weighing more than 5 kilograms each, went through his roof and into homes across the street, punching more than 50 holes. His pergola's front fence, pool shed and flagpole are all gone. A fire and emergency manager in Mangawhai, Wipari Henwood, says it was lucky there weren't more serious injuries given the devastation on the ground. The fire service was needed for only 2 rescues. Both people were taken to hospital in a serious condition. More than 100 homes remain without power. 4 Mangere State houses that started to float in the Auckland anniversary weekend flooding 2 years ago are still propped up with poles. Questions are being raised about the polystyrene blocks in their foundations, which engineers contacted by RNZ say became buoyant when water reached them. Kainga Ora says the houses were built to the building code and there's no evidence the material in the foundations caused the damage. An economist for the Institute of Economic Research says this year will show if the government can deliver long-term sustainable growth policies. The Prime Minister's growth-focused State of the Nation speech last week highlighted tourism, mining and foreign investment as key to his strategy. But Shamabil Jacob says the high-volume, low-value tourism model New Zealand has used previously has been shown not to work, and he says mining policy may not survive the next government, so what's needed for long-term growth is a bipartisan approach. The United States has confirmed reports Colombia has turned back 2 US military aircraft carrying deported migrants. Each left California carrying about 80 passengers. Earlier, Colombia's president said migrants are not criminals and should be returned with dignity on civilian planes. That's the news. Now the weather in the towns and cities today with Met Service. Kaitaia, Whangarei and Auckland have the chance of a shower clearing in the afternoon. Kaitaia and Whangarei 23, 22 in Auckland. Hamilton, Tauranga, Whakatane and Rotorua, fine but could get a morning shower. Hamilton and Rotorua 23, Tauranga 26, 27 in Whakatane. Gisborne, Napier and Hastings may get a shower today, otherwise fine. Gisborne 24, 25 for Napier and Hastings. Taupo, Taumarunui, New Plymouth, Whanganui, Palmerston North and Levin. Chance of a morning shower, otherwise sunny. Taupo, Whanganui, Levin and Palmerston North all 21 today, 22 in New Plymouth, 23 for Taumarunui. Masterton, Kapiti and Wellington showers could be heavy, clearing to fine by the evening. Masterton 19, 20 for Kapiti, 17 in Wellington. Blenheim's mainly fine, chance of a shower or two from afternoon, 20. Nelson partly cloudy, could get a shower from evening, 23. Westport a few showers, clear this afternoon, 20. Greymouth and Hokitika, fine, 20. Kaikoura a few showers, possibly heavy, 18 degrees. Christchurch and Ashburton rain and it may be heavy but clearing this morning. Christchurch 18, 17 for Ashburton. Timaru showers clearing this afternoon, 19. Oamaru some morning cloud then fine, 18. Wanaka and Queenstown, a few morning showers then fine, 17 in Queenstown, Wanaka 19 degrees. Alexandra, some cloud morning and afternoon, 18. Dunedin, a few showers till evening, 16. Invercargill, a few showers today, 16 degrees as well. It's almost 25 minutes to 8.
Thank you very much, Nicola. You're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. A lot of you have got in touch to clarify the situation around solar panels in the event of a natural disaster and of course, the power off in Mangawhai and workers are desperately trying to get them back up and running. A lot of power lines down. What happens with solar panels? Well, according to Jean and others, they are legally required to have a cut-off and will not feed back into the grid because of the danger to power workers. Jean says many solar power users do not have any power during a power outage because of this cut-off. Others saying, it's a legally required feature and it's called anti-islanding. Apparently.
Good to know. People also texting in around the revelation that around 1,500 consents have been issued for houses to be built in floodplains around Auckland. This person says, I do wonder about insurance of homes in flood-prone areas. Will they be insurable or will buyers not be aware of this until after purchasing? Yeah, that is an interesting point. And sometimes the insurance issue, I mean, they're dealing with big dollars, and so they may well be the arbiter, even around those consents being issues of whether you can get money to build a house there. So thank you very much for your thoughts on that. Do keep them coming in. Text 2101. Let us know what you're thinking. It's 24 to 8 now.
Overseas, US President Donald Trump says he'd like to see Palestinians in Gaza leave the Strip and be taken in by other Arab nations, including Jordan and Egypt. Now, he told journalists aboard Air Force One that the Strip was literally a demolition site and suggested it be cleaned out. There are estimates that at least 60% of the buildings in Gaza have been destroyed or damaged as a result of Israel's bombing of the territory over the last 15 months. Now, Hamas says it would oppose any plan to relocate Palestinians, while far-right Israeli politicians are welcoming his comments. Here is Donald Trump talking to reporters on Air Force One.
I'm looking at the whole Gaza Strip right now, and it's a mess. It's a real mess.
So you'd like Jordan to house people from Gaza?
To take people. I'd like Egypt to take people. I'm talking to General El-Sisi tomorrow, sometime, I believe. And I'd like Egypt to take people, and I'd like Jordan to take people. You're talking about probably 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing. It's it's over the centuries that's many conflicts that site, and I don't know. It's something has to happen, but it's literally a demolition site right now. Almost everything's demolished, and people are dying there. So I'd rather get involved with some of the Arab nations and build housing at a different location where they can maybe live in peace for a change.
Temporarily, or would they
It could be either. Could be temporarily, could be long term.
That is Donald Trump, of course, speaking aboard Air Force One. Now, President Trump's comments come as thousands of displaced Palestinians are gathering in central Gaza, waiting for permission to head north to their homes. On Saturday, Israel said it would not allow them to return home as expected, accusing Hamas of breaching terms of the ceasefire deal. Here's the BBC's Nick Beake.
This is central Gaza today. Thousands of Palestinians who'd been told they'd be able to head north to what remains of their homes. But Israel is blocking their way, accusing Hamas of breaking the terms of this fragile ceasefire deal. So they wait with all they still possess. Another moment.
Open. When we cross, we will still see the destruction that took place, and we will retrieve those who are buried under the rubble.
Civilian hostage Abel Yehud is being held in Gaza. Israel says it won't open the checkpoint until her release is arranged. Hamas says she will be freed next weekend. President Trump has now described Gaza as a demolition site and talked about cleaning out the territory. It's brought accusations he was suggesting ethnic cleansing. The president said he'd like to see neighbouring Egypt and Jordan taking in more Palestinians. Here in Israel, prominent far-right politicians have been delighted by President Trump's comments. They want to see Jewish settlers move into Gaza eventually. Hamas say they will continue to block any plan to force Gazans from their homeland, and that Palestinians must be the ones rebuilding the Strip. This weekend has seen 4 more Israeli hostages released by Hamas and then reunited with their families. 200 Palestinian prisoners, many serving life sentences, have been freed from jail as part of this deal. A week in, and this precarious truce is holding, but it's under increasing strain, and the next stages look even more fraught.
That is the BBC's Nick Beake reporting from Israel. Now, in the last hour or so, there has seemed to have been an agreement reached for the release of the hostage in question on Friday. That is a day ahead of previously scheduled release dates, so we'll keep you up to date on that. 20 minutes to 8.
Yeah, well, staying in the Middle East, and Lebanon's health ministry says Israel has fired on citizens trying to return to their homes. This is in the south of the country, killing at least 15 people and injuring dozens more. Israel's military missed today's deadline to leave the area as a 60-day ceasefire deal expired. Now, it won't say how long its forces will stay in Lebanon, as both the Israeli military and Hezbollah fighters were supposed to have completed their withdrawals from the area. The BBC's Hugo Bachega is in Beirut.
This morning, right after this deadline expired, we saw some dramatic images of thousands of residents trying to go back to those towns and villages along the Lebanese-Israeli border. And in recent days, Hezbollah's television station, Al-Manar, actually encouraged residents to go back home. This is an area where Hezbollah has a very strong presence. It still enjoys significant support, despite warnings from the Lebanese military and the Israeli military that wasn't safe to do so. So in some places, in the south, the Israeli military still has a presence, and we've seen those shootings happening. The Israeli military confirming that it had opened fire. It didn't confirm that it had hit people. It also said that some people had been detained for interrogation. So it shows a very tense situation there, as the Israelis say that this withdrawal is going to continue gradually. It hasn't said how long these troops will remain in the country, but obviously this is a country that has memories of Israeli occupations in the past. So the idea that Israeli soldiers are going to continue here in Lebanon, inside the country, beyond this deadline, is seen as unacceptable and a reason for concern.
Well, that was the BBC's Hugo Bachega in Beirut. It's 18 minutes to 8.
Back home now, oral hearings for the Treaty Principles Bill begin just after 8 this morning. Of course, the bill has received an unprecedented number of written submissions. Political reporter Lillian Hanley joins us now. Kia ora, good morning.
Morning, Corin.
Quite the lineup here this morning. Talk us through this, how it's going to work. David Seymour, which is unusual in itself to have a minister, not unprecedented probably, but unusual. He will kick things off.
That's right. So he is first up this morning, and I'll just note that he's been given extra time, we might say. So there's 80 hours in total of oral submissions. He's getting outside of that, because as you say, yes, it is rare for a minister to speak on his own bill, but not unheard of. They can appear to just help the select committee consider the bill. But on the 80 hours, RNZ understands that it's upwards of 15,000 submitters of those unprecedented 300,000 written submissions who requested to submit orally. And I put that to the chair of the Justice Committee, James Meagher. He's saying, numbers are still actually being finalised. But he said of that sort of 15,000 oral requests,
Kitty up second, I think, as part of the National Urban Māori Authority. Gary Judd, KC, Carwyn Jones.
Some big hitters there. Big hitters. Carwyn Jones, like you say, Jane Kelsey, of course, Natalie Coates, some of those legal experts who have been quite vocally opposed to the bill. You've also got constitutional expert Graham Edgler, you've got educationalist Elizabeth Rata, you've got pollster David Farrer, Ganesh Nana, former Productivity Commission boss, and then you've got historians Vincent O'Malley and Spencer Schooler, also former politicians Marilyn Waring and Andrew Little appearing today, and then organisations, as you say, National Urban Māori Authority and Asians Supporting Tino Rangatiratanga, and also Hobson's Pledge will speak today.
I mean, keen observers will look at their list and they'll kind of know where each is coming from. How have they divvied it up in terms of sort of for and against, or do they have a criteria?
Well, that's what the committee decided, essentially, that each party select a representation, basically. So what we could assume from that is that each party, given the ACT Party is the only party who have said that they will support this bill after select committee. All other parties have said that they will vote against. I think in that we can read into that perhaps, but also I think that there's some consideration here as to, again, the broad range of views. So speaking to James Meagher, who is the chair of the Justice Committee, he pointed out that they wanted to make sure that it wasn't just going to be your template type submissions, that it wouldn't wouldn't become just a petition or a campaign in that regard.
Interesting, most of them have got 10 minutes, which is, I'm stressed just looking at the rundown, how on earth they're going to get it through in time. You can imagine the job that the chair is going to have, people sticking to time, and 10 minutes barely leaves any time for questions, let alone an opening statement. So there's some considerations for people to think about there when they submit.
Yeah, it is going to be tight, as you say, and I think James Mega, again, they're open to people submitting how they want to, right? So if people do want to come in, and I think an example was discussed with James in terms of whether it was a song or a haka, if people wanted to do that, it's up to them how they choose to spend their 10 minutes.
I mean, it's when obviously the government is, in terms of National and New Zealand First, we heard it at Ratana, reiterating once again, this bill is going nowhere. But the process itself, and today, can't help but think it's going to be fairly significant because of who is speaking. The attention that it will draw today, I think is going to be interesting.
Absolutely. This is, I guess you would say, today's oral hearings is the kicking off of what David Seymour called, his call when he introduced this bill. The purpose behind the policy was to start a national conversation, right? So he says the Select Committee process is democratising that conversation around the principles. His own justice officials, though, last year actually indicated that this wasn't the best way to have a national conversation. But as we saw, you had the Hikoi Mō Te Tiriti arrive at Parliament, tens of thousands of people in opposition to this bill, and people showing up today, as you say, really big hitters, coming with some probably quite strong submissions, having that conversation.
It's going to be fascinating. What should be live streamed, won't it? People can watch it all day if they want, presumably.
Indeed, all day.
Very good. Thank you, Lillian. Lillian Hanley there, our political reporter. It is 12 minutes to 8.
And you're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. Let's get you up to date with traffic in Auckland. As expected, due to the public holiday, it is pretty quiet on the roads there. For those commuting in Wellington, though, to get into the city from Upper Hutt, currently taking 44 minutes. Those coming in from Kapiti, expected drive time around 49 minutes. And from Miramar, it's taking 17 minutes. In Christchurch, traffic starting to build for those heading in from Rolleston, currently looking at around 33 minutes. Also 33 minutes coming into the CBD from Rangiora. It is 12 minutes to 8 now. Well, some charter schools say that they are turning students away before they've even opened. The 7 publicly funded, privately owned schools approved last year are opening their doors over the next 2 weeks. The government is spending $153 million over 4 years to revive the charter model. This is despite mixed evidence of their success. Here's our education correspondent, John Gerritsen.
Tipene is a boarding school opening on the site of the former St Stephen's School just south of Auckland on Waitangi Day. One of its 2 tumuaki, Nathan Jury, says it's the first Māori boarding school to open in 100 years, and it has had 4 times as many applications as places for its first intake.
We ended up with just over 120 applications, and so we reapproached the Trust Board to say would they shift the number from 30, where our initial figure was pitched at, to allowing us to have 40, and we've landed at 42.
He says interest is not restricted to well-off families, despite a boarding fee of about $15,000 a year.
Cost definitely plays a part in it, and so the Trust Board here worked really hard to make this affordable. So, I think if you were to look at what it costs to raise young people, let alone have them access opportunities in sport and culture and all of the other costs that come on top of feeding and clothing children, this is actually a cost-effective way of raising young people.
Mastery School is a Christchurch outpost of an Australian group of schools. Principal Rose McInerney says it's enrolling primary-age children who struggle in mainstream classrooms.
A lot of our students have learning struggles, and they might have a diagnosis of dyslexia or dysgraphia or dyscalculia. They might find learning hard. Those are the children that we're serving in our school.
She says 60 children are enrolled with a further 40 waitlisted. She says the school uses a very specific teaching method.
We teach 85% repeated content every day, so it's very predictable. The children know exactly what to expect, and then each day we're introducing 15% new material, and then we're testing them really regularly. So every 2 weeks they're getting a mastery test, and it's amazing. Like, the children actually come to love and look forward to those tests because they're achieving success at the level that they're at.
Also in Christchurch is Christchurch North College, set up by a group of local state schools to work with disengaged children. Its principal, Justin Fields, says the school is oversubscribed for its starting roll of 15.
We've had 2 interviews so far and there's been a lot of, tears, but the fact is that there's also a lot of hope that's coming through from parents, I think, who, just love their children, who, like us, want the best for them.
He says the charter model allowed the schools to create a separate entity with its own funding and staffing, rather than tacking a unit or class for struggling students onto an existing school.
There are certainly schools doing some of the things that we're going to do, but it's going to be a combination of factors that we think are going to work that are probably different, because we can drill down in terms of resources. We're going to have intensive wraparound Hawara support for these students. I think that's probably going to be alongside the personalised learning plans is going to be the real key.
Justin Fields says schools in other parts of Christchurch, and probably in other cities, are likely to want similar setups, and the college could create satellites in other areas.
That was our education correspondent, John Gerritsen. It is 8 minutes to 8 now. Let's talk tennis. This year's Australian Open has been the talk of the sporting world, well, down under at least, not just for the tennis. Commentator Dave Worsley says the booing and rowdy crowd behaviour has raised some questions about whether there's a need for some fan education. He joins us now. Kia ora, good morning, Dave.
Morning, Ingrid.
Are you up now? I suppose you were up till all hours watching the men's final, were you?
I managed to get back to the hotel about 1 or something like that, I think it was. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, thank you for hauling yourself out of bed to have a chat with us. I'll get to the crowd behaviour in a moment. Your thoughts, though, on the final last night? Yannick Sinner just too good?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, pretty much an easy summary from Alexander Zverev, that he was beaten by someone who was just too good tonight. And, straight sets in the end, albeit that the first set was very close. And on an opportunity, I guess, gone begging there in that first set. In fact, the net cord really did help out Yannick Sinner and help him really go through early on, that is, after the first set. And Sinner just was able to move his opponent and up the intensity during the rallies and win those vital points.
Okay, let's talk crowd behaviour. A number of headlines really coming out of the tournament. For example, the booing of Novak Djokovic, that was disappointing, I guess.
Yeah, very disappointing when you have a 10-time champion booed off the court because, he was injured. Everybody knew that he was injured going into the semi-final, into his match, and was the previous match he'd sort of struggled a little bit, and you could see that he was bandaged up, and then eventually having to withdraw from his match. Yeah, that was a shame because he's been a champion for Melbourne, a 10-time winner, for goodness sake. So, to boo someone like that, well, perhaps we just lacked education in the crowd that, hey, this guy doesn't just pull out for no reason at all.
No, I think he was even driven to post an image of his scan showing that, I think it was some sort of abdominal tear or something that was issuing him and bothering him. And other players have also in this tournament been sort of speaking out in support of their competitors about the crowd behaviour and also the post-match interviews too.
Yeah, Ben Shelton was a little bit surprised after doing so well at the tournament. And, it was like, give us a little bit of respect on the court. We've just won a big match and we're pretty happy about it. And you're asking us some very bizarre questions in there. So he actually said that at the end of his press conference and said, hang on, something else I want to say. And, Shelton's a young man, but his father's been around he was a player as well. So he's got a lot of people around him, but he was just shocked a little bit like, well, why are you asking these unusual questions?
Were they, you would have listened to a lot of post-game interviews. Were they particularly bad?
A little bit cringeworthy, I think, is probably like, why? Okay,
Yeah.
Just ask them about the match. Hey, you won. Congratulations. You happy with that? That sort of thing. Make it simple. It's out on the court. These guys have just played 3 hours or however many hours, and they're sweating. They're trying to get their breath back, and you're asking them something about, I don't know, just crazy sort of questions that are like their brain's not thinking about it.
What about the player reactions now? Sabalenka obviously upset losing her women's final, and I forget the name of the other one who smashed a camera on the the net camera as well. So the players weren't always outstanding as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're going to get upset when you lose a final when you think you should have won. And, Sabalenka thought perhaps as the defending champion and world number one, she should have beaten Madison Keys. Keys is obviously too good. And unfortunately, she took it out on the racket on court and obliterated the racket. And that was not the best place to do it if you wanted to be seen as nicey nice. But the racket suffered in that situation. Medvedev obliterated a camera. He didn't think it was going to be so strong. In fact, the camera destroyed his racket, which is quite amazing. These things do happen. The funny thing is that we all like the car crash as such. We all like to see players sort of go through these issues. Wouldn't be tennis without it. We've had it throughout the years. So in many ways, the crowd love it. Other ways, then we tell them off about it.
What did you make of Sabalenka going off the court? She sort of says to compose herself before being able to come back and sort of show due respect, to Madison.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I mean, if it's going to actually get her sort of, like you said, composed and then have her be able to accept her trophy, sitting on court pretty much in tears with a towel over your head, that must be quite a lonely experience.
Interesting stuff. And it was, I think had record crowds. So certainly none of this is doing the tournament or tennis, I guess, any harm at all. Appreciate your time as always. That is tennis commentator Dave Worsley with his thoughts there on the Australian Open. It is 3 minutes to 8. Let's have a whistle around the morning newspapers. The New Zealand Herald leading with a new study into child hunger. The findings there suggesting kids who are hungry at school end up years behind their peers in key subjects.
The Waikato Times has a story on a Hamilton motelier who collected more than $26 million in taxpayer cash during the emergency housing boom, who now faces liquidation for 3 Hamilton motel businesses over unpaid taxes.
Political heavyweights turn up the heat on Treaty Bill. That is the headline on the Post with, as we've been talking about, the Select Committee scheduled to hear from 50 submitters today.
You had a few texts in on that too, actually. One suggesting that as per the minister appearing, which is certainly rare, this texter Michael says that this is a new aspect of procedure implemented last year following a review of parliamentary standing orders. It is now normal for a committee to at least invite a minister to present on their bill. Of course, not all ministers take up the invitation, but it is very much part of the parliamentary process. Thank you very much for that, Michael. The press. This reports that the future of food trucks operating at the Christchurch Arts Centre may be at risk due to revised resource consent applications.
And finally, in the Otago Daily Times, the Dunedin City Council is looking at options to reduce the flood risk in South Dunedin. Coming up to 8 o'clock now, you're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National, our first program back after a pretty delicious break, it has to be said. We're on text 2101. Let us know your thoughts, anything you've heard on the program this morning. Your weather today, scattered showers around, more strong winds for many parts of the country. Fine spells, though, are set to return in the afternoon. Ko Ingrid tēnei, I'm in Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland.
Atamarie ko Corin Dan tēnei in Wellington. In this hour, we'll find out what support the northern town of Mangawhai needs in the aftermath of the damaging tornado. Kaipara Mayor Craig Jetson joins us.
In Canterbury, a person was critically injured last night after a tree fell on a caravan. We're going to speak with the local fire service. Quite a dramatic rescue there.
Also before 9 years, submissions for the Treaty Principles Bill. They begin at 8:30 this morning, so we'll get the latest as it happens. Yes, Christchurch's centre is filling with some of the world's best street performers with the World Buskers Festival underway. And Kerry-Ann Walsh is back from her summer holidays too.
RNZ News at 8. Atamarie, good morning. I'm Nicola Wright. A resident says the winds that struck Mangawhai on Sunday morning felt like a truck hitting his house. The small Northland town was hit by high winds in the early hours, wrecking houses and knocking down power poles and lines and trees. Grant Noonan was awake when it began and says it was quick, violent and loud. He told Morning Report his first thought was for his flagpole.
We put the New Zealand flag up for long weekends and warriors, etc., etc. And I was lying there thinking that wind's starting to pick up. I'd better put that flagpole in case it bends, but it's more than bent now, it's gone.
Grant Noonan says the concrete tiles from his neighbour's house, weighing more than 5 kilograms each, went through his roof, punching more than 50 holes, and into homes across the street. His pergola's pool shed and front fence are gone too. Meanwhile, Kaipara Civil Defence is urging residents of Old Waipu Road to respect the cordons that remain in place due to downed power lines. Emergency Management Controller John Burt told Morning Report's Corin Dan power should soon be restored to Moya Street, where linesmen were at work last night.
But in Old Waipu Road, the more people that are moving in and out of the area is going to make it difficult for the lines company today, because they've got to pick up all those lines, join the brakes and get them back on the poles.
So what's your advice then to people in the area who are wanting to go and check things in homes or move around?
Yeah, look, I think if people can just stay away at this stage.
John Burt says he understands it's frustrating and the top priority is restoring power to the street today. Mr Burt says a team from Auckland Council will be door-knocking this morning to find out what people need. The MP for Northland says all power should be restored by 5 o'clock this evening. More than 100 homes in the Mangawhai area are without electricity. Grant McCullum says North Power is working hard to get the power back on, and it should be right across town by 5 o'clock. Engineers say polystyrene blocks used in the foundations of 4 state homes floated when water reached them, causing the houses to lift in the Auckland anniversary flooding 2 years ago. But Kāinga Ora says the houses were built to the building code and extreme rainfall was to blame for their damage. Amy Williams reports.
The 4 state houses that started to float 2 years ago are still propped up with poles in Mangere, awaiting their future. 2 engineers contacted by RNZ say polystyrene blocks in the foundations became buoyant when water reached them because there wasn't enough weight to keep the houses stable. Kāinga Ora says the home's foundations were damaged by the unprecedented flood water. It says no errors were found in its flotation checks and there's no evidence the material in the foundations caused the damage.
1,500 more houses were granted consent on floodplains in Auckland in the last year. Council data shows 2 years on from the Auckland Anniversary Day floods, the rate of consents granted in flood and other hazard zones remains unchanged. The Justice Committee Chair says it's not practical or feasible to hear from everyone who wanted to make an oral submission on the Treaty Principles Bill. Oral hearings are beginning now, with the committee set to listen to 80 hours in total after the bill received an unprecedented number of written submissions. National MP James Meagher says he doesn't know the latest figures.
If they are ballpark accurate, if you did the maths on those hours, that would be something like 54 days of straight 24-hour worth of hearings. Now, that's just not practical, not feasible.
James Meagher says with every bill considered, there's a balance between allowing everyone to have a say and letting Parliament do its job. Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon have been accused of killing at least 22 people who were trying to return home. Lebanon's health ministry says more than 120 others were injured when Israeli forces opened fire after Israel failed to meet Sunday's deadline to remove its forces. The BBC's Hugo Bashega has more.
Israel says Lebanon has not fully implemented the deal, which also includes the deployment of Lebanese soldiers to a part of the country long dominated by Hezbollah. Lebanon has accused Israel of delaying its withdrawal. In several locations, Israeli soldiers opened fire. The Israeli army said those had been warning shots and did not give details of the incidents.
Some charter schools say they're turning students away. 7 of the publicly funded, privately owned schools are opening their doors for the first time over the next 2 weeks. Our education correspondent John Gerritsen reports.
The charter schools were approved last year and some are reporting strong interest. Tipene, a boarding school on the site of the former St Stephen's School for Māori boys, south of Auckland, increased its starting intake from 30 to 42 after receiving more than 120 applications. The Mastery School in Christchurch is for children with learning difficulties. It says it will open with 60 students and has a further 40 on a waiting list. Christchurch North College, set up by a group of state schools to work with disengaged students, says it will open with 15, but had applications for more.
Dozens of vessels are set to take to Auckland Harbour today for the Anniversary Day Regatta. It's New Zealand's oldest sporting event, having run for 185 years, and thousands of spectators are expected. The regatta starts at 9 o'clock with dragon boat races on the Viaduct Harbour. Tugboat races begin at 10 at Westhaven Marina, followed by classic launch and classic and modern keelboat races. Racers will be competing for one of 60 trophies, which are on permanent display at the Maritime Museum, and more than $15,000 worth of prize money. That's the news.
Thank you very much, Nicola. You're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. Now, shortly we'll hear from the Kaipara Mayor for the latest on the situation on the ground in Mangawhai following the tornado, or so-called tornado, certainly, that struck over the weekend. We're also going to get an update too on the situation in Canterbury, where a person was freed from the wreckage of a camper van last night. That was actually south of Culverden. It sounded like quite a scary ordeal there as well. So we'll get an update from the Chief Fire Officer for the Volunteer Fire Brigade there. First, let's go to sport with Nathan. And Nathan, Yannick Sinner doing it on the court, but he's got a little bit of a battle off court, I see.
He has, and he says that the possibility of a doping ban ruling him out of upcoming Grand Slam tournaments did not provide extra motivation to win the Australian Open. The 23-year-old Italian was dominant in a straight sets win over second seed Alexander Zverev of Germany in the final match at Melbourne Park. Sinner was cleared of any wrongdoing by an independent panel after testing positive for a banned substance in April, but WADA appealed, and a hearing will be held by the Court of Arbitration for Sport in April, just a month before the French Open begins.
I'm not thinking at the moment about this. No, I just came off an amazing run again here. I want to enjoy this moment, to be honest. And then the hearing, we know now the dates, and that's it. I mean, I want to enjoy this one now.
Auckland FC coach Steve Corica says their never-say-die attitude is rewarding them in the A-League. Auckland have returned to the top of the standings following another late win, this time over Western Sydney Wanderers and Parramatta, with substitute Neidar Moreno scoring in the 95th minute, giving them a 1-0 win.
I think it shows by the end of the game that we run over a lot of teams. I think in the second half we scored late goals, and that's just never given up really, and it's becoming a habit obviously, which is good for us. Bad for other teams. When you score that late, there's just no opportunity to get back into the game.
Meanwhile, the Phoenix women were beaten 1-0 at the Central Coast Mariners. Free skier Luca Harrington has picked up a silver medal in the big air to complete a successful X Games at Aspen in Colorado for Kiwi freestyle athletes. New Zealand finished with 2 gold medals, 1 silver and 2 bronze. The Black Ferns Sevens lead in the World Series has been cut to just 2 points after losing to Australia in the final of the Perth round, and the Breakers' hopes of qualifying for the NBL playoffs are over, following a heavy 94-78 loss to the Adelaide 36ers. Koina ngā pūrongo hakinakina. That's your sports news. Nicola is back with weather after this.
I'm Catherine Ryan. On 9 to Noon this week, Gene Kelly was one of the most famous actors and dancers. Now his story's told by his widow, Patricia Ward Kelly. Chronic insomniac turned sleep expert, Kate McHale. Dancer Lula Washington, whose company's trained new generations of dancers in LA. And Caroline Darien on the case that shocked the world. Her mother, Giselle Pellico, drugged and raped by her father and many others over a decade. With me on 9 to Noon on RNZ National.
On air, online and on Freeview Channel 50. Forecast from Met Service to midnight for the northern half of the North Island, from Taumarunui and Taupo northwards, including Bay of Plenty. Becoming fine in most places this morning, but a few showers linger in Northland into the afternoon. For Taranaki, Taihape, Whanganui and Manawatu, scattered showers clear this afternoon. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, cloud at times, isolated showers. Wairarapa, Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington, showers may be heavy, clearing and becoming fine late afternoon or evening. Nelson, Buller and Grey, isolated showers clearing on the west coast this afternoon, and Nelson later this evening, otherwise just cloud at times. Westland and Northern Fiordland, mainly fine. Marlborough and Canterbury, rain or showers clearing this afternoon, but they do linger for Marlborough. Southern Fiordland, Otago and Southland, scattered showers clearing this afternoon or evening. Chatham Islands, rain could be thundery, easing this afternoon. In the main centres, Auckland is fine apart from some cloud this morning. Southwesterly strong in exposed places, easing in the evening, 23 degrees. Tauranga fine, but the chance of a morning shower. Southwesterlies easing from evening, 26. Hamilton fine, maybe a shower this morning. Southwesterlies ease this evening, 23. Wellington, a few showers, could be heavy, clearing to fine in the afternoon. Strong southerlies ease in the evening, 17. Christchurch, rain may be heavy, but clearing to fine this afternoon. Strong southwesterlies ease this evening, 18 degrees. Dunedin, a few showers clearing in the evening. Fresh southwesterlies easing then as well, and a high of 16. You're listening to RNZ National. It's 8:10.
And this is Morning Report. The Mayor of Kaipara is expecting the clean-up from the destructive Mangawhai storm to be a big job. Around 50 houses were damaged and at least 4 destroyed. Roofs were ripped off. There is debris everywhere and power poles toppled when many say what was a tornado struck at 3 a.m. on Sunday morning. Joining us now is Kaipara Mayor Craig Jepson. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning.
What is the latest situation that you have about families that have had to leave their homes? Has everyone got accommodation? Do you know how many people are out?
Look, we haven't had to use a welfare centre at all. We've had friends and family have accommodated people that needed it, and we've had generous offers of accommodation from the public, so that's been pretty well taken care of. I think most people are still in place in their houses. There's obviously some severely damaged houses, at least 2 to 4 are write-offs. There's plenty of roofs that have, lost their roofs or part of their roofs. So big clean-up to happen here today and tomorrow. Yep.
And what is the situation with the cordon in regards to people wanting to get back to their homes to do that clean-up, but they can't?
Well, there was a safety issue yesterday where emergency services wouldn't allow people to move freely because of that concern with the lines, but that's dissipated today. The North Power have done an amazing job. They've put all the power poles back up, and they'll be stringing lines today, and we hope to get power completely restored between lunch and 5 p.m. this evening.
And so, in terms of any risks and hazards that are still around, is there any rubbish around or any concerns that you have about the clean-up and any urgent issues?
Oh, look, we're going to have a response team door knocking this morning after 9 o'clock. We're going to check on residents. There's a lot of people that are very traumatised by this event, actually, because it's been so severe. You imagine at 3 o'clock in the morning when this thing came through, it was frightening. And there's a lot of particularly elderly people that, they just want to talk probably.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I mean, in terms of any warning or forecast, these were obviously extreme and extraordinary weather events. Was there any indication that this type of storm was coming, or has there been any history of these sort of tornadoes before?
Oh, look, I think these random events occur. We had a tornado here 4 years ago, and I think there was a death in Auckland a number of years ago from on the North Shore, wasn't there, from a tornado? So occasionally they happen. I don't think they're that predictable that forecasters have the ability to say when they're going to happen.
No, it's just scary stuff. So what is your priority today then in terms of the clean-up and what your message, I guess, is to local people?
Well, people, there's a huge clean-up going on. One of the things they need to remember with insurance is make sure you keep a receipt of your tipping fees, for example. In that regard, our council will be doing curbside recovery of some of the rubbish. Once we get these power lines up, we can start assisting with that clean-up with some contractors. The priority is, I think, is to, stay at home and help each other. And the community spirit has been amazing. I mean, trying to hold people back that wanted to get in to help's been almost a problem because, they care about each other, obviously.
Bit tough on your anniversary weekend. I mean, a lot of people would have had plans, presumably, for celebrating that in some way, barbecues and those sort of things. That's disappointing for you?
Oh, yeah, but town's full, there's quite a few kids that had their tents ripped up, I think. But, the people here will support each other and, they'll be talking about this event for years, I guess. But it's been tough on people. It's very tough because, we've got tough financial times as it is. And, this sort of thing on top of that's not helpful.
All right, thank you, Craig. Good luck with the rest of the clean-up today. That is Kaipara Mayor Craig Jepson there, who's in Mangawhai this morning. It is 8:15.
And you're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. Well, in Canterbury, a person was freed from the wreckage of a camper van last night after it was crushed by a tree. Emergency services arrived at the scene in Balmoral, which is just south of Culverden, at about 7:20 last night. They found a large tree lying across the camper van, which was parked at the Balmoral Recreation Reserve camping ground. A digger and a local farmer's tractor were brought in to help remove the tree, and the person was freed just before 10 p.m. Chief Fire Officer of the Culverden Volunteer Fire Brigade, Craig Ritchie, joins us now. Kia ora, good morning, Craig. It sounds like a real team effort here. Tell us what you were confronted with at the site.
Yeah, kia ora, Ingrid. Yes, we arrived there, in actual fact, while responding to a motor vehicle crash. We were redirected there, so emergency services were pushed a wee bit last night at the same time. So we arrived at the Balmoral camping ground about 7:30, and there was a large tree, as you said, over the top of the camper van at that time.
And you obviously needed help to get the person out?
Yeah, so quite obvious with the size of the tree that we needed some pretty heavy-duty lifting gear. So the strengths of a volunteer fire brigade is that we've got a lot of local knowledge. So we were able to get a tractor from Ngātahu Farms just down the road, a 230 horsepower tractor, and our local contractor was contacted to get his digger.
Fantastic. So it's I know a guy who knows a guy who's got a tractor or a digger, and then they just roll up to help, do they?
Exactly, yep. Well, one of the brigade members works in Ngātahu, and I had another brigade member that farms almost around the corner, so we were able to get his tractor as well and remove smaller trees to gain access for the bigger gear to get in there and do the heavy lifting.
Pretty scary, though. Someone was actually trapped inside that van. We understand they had critical injuries and that St John were actually having to treat the patient while they were still stuck in the vehicle. What happened there?
So there's actually an amazing part of the story. They were both sitting at a table in their van, and when the tree came down, it was a bit of a freak wind gust that brought the tree down, and she was able to get out with minor injuries through a window, and he was trapped in that on the other side from the waist down. So it meant that we had to dig our way through the back of the camper van to gain access to him. So when we rescued him, we were able to make a successful rescue. Yeah.
And was he conscious? Were you able to talk to him throughout that rescue?
Yes, we were until the drugs were administered. Yep.
Okay, and we understand he was taken. Well, you couldn't get the helicopter in because of the weather, so he had to go by ambulance.
Yeah, I believe the helicopter was diverted to the first accident that we were supposed to respond to. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Hey, excellent work, Craig, and it is lovely to hear how the community can come together in what was a pretty dramatic and potentially very dangerous situation. We appreciate your time this morning. Craig Ritchie is the Chief Fire Officer of the Culverden Volunteer Fire Brigade, just talking there about rescuing someone from a crushed camper van just south of Culverden. It is 19 minutes past 8 now.
You're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. Traffic in Auckland, well, it's pretty quiet this morning due to your public holiday, no doubt. For those commuting in Wellington, it will take you 45 minutes to reach the CBD from Kapiti, 40 minutes from Upper Hutt, while it is 19 minutes from Miramar. In Christchurch, there's some traffic on the commute from the Rangiora to the CBD. Currently 32 minutes in from Rolleston this morning. Now, we're talking housing, and 4 state houses that started to float in the Auckland anniversary weekend flooding 2 years ago are still propped up with poles and mangere awaiting their future. Questions are being raised about the polystyrene blocks in their foundations, and engineers contacted by RNZ say these acted like floaties when the water reached them. But Kāinga Ora says the houses were built to building code, and it's the extreme rainfall that's to blame for their damage. Amy Williams has the story.
The night of the floods in Auckland, state housing tenant Kelly Day had a harrowing escape from her 2-storey house when it lifted and tilted, with water coming into the house and waist deep at street level. Hers was one of 4 homes in a social housing development near a stream in Mangere that started to float.
It wasn't heaps of water, but you could see it coming in
the front door. And then I went back upstairs, and then when I came back downstairs to have a look at that's when I noticed that the house was tilting.
She got out with her 4 children and headed for higher ground. Ms Day says in the following days, a friend who works in construction raised concerns about the polystyrene in the foundations, which had become visible. RNZ obtained Auckland Council's property file for the development and shared it with 3 independent engineers. Whangarei-based geotechnical engineer David Buxton of Northland Geotech ran buoyancy check calculations for the house Day lived in. He found that using the council-required benchmark for pre-building checks of a 1 in 100 year flood, which Kāinga Ora would have used, the house would not likely float. Knowing the house had flooded, he also calculated what would happen if water reached floor level and found the house would easily float.
If you imagine yourself standing in the sea at low tide with this block of polystyrene, and then as the tide comes in, trying to hold it there, at some point it's going to lift you off the ground and float you up. Just sort of what's happened with this house. It's had a big block of polystyrene. As the water level's risen, it's just floated up.
Auckland-based structural engineer and managing director at CompuSoft Engineering, Nick Brook, says floods can cause buildings to act like a boat if there's not enough weight or another mitigation such as piles to hold them down.
The foundation material here, the lightweight foam, will increase the buoyancy, but that's not necessarily problematic provided there's enough weight above to hold it down, and so it just needs to be checked that those two things are in the right proportions.
Kāinga Ora's General Manager of Construction and Innovation, Patrick Doherty, says the agency's construction projects are all built to legislative and council requirements.
What occurred in January 2023 was considered a 1 in 200 year storm event. Those 4 properties were the only Kāinga Ora homes to have their foundations impacted by the force of the unprecedented floodwater.
Kāinga Ora says it had commissioned a review of the flood damage in which no errors had been found in its flotation checks. The agency refused to provide RNZ a copy of the report, citing legal privilege. David Buxton believes engineers need guidance for using the now common polystyrene in foundations of houses in flood zones. He suggests it could be similar to what exists for earthquake-proofing designs, planning for a predicted quake but asking what happens if a bigger one comes.
The parallel would work here. Yes, we should be doing a buoyancy check in 1 in 100 year flood, but we should also step back and say, hey, could this building float? And is that acceptable for this scenario?
An engineering geologist who viewed the property file but did not want to be named questioned the use of polystyrene blocks for houses in a flood-prone area that needed ground stability measures. The Building and Research Association recommends anyone building in flood zones should take a wider perspective than what's required to sign off a dwelling with the local council.
Amy Williams with that story. It's 23 minutes past 8.
And we are staying with that issue. It is 2 years on from the Auckland Anniversary Day floods, and some homeowners say they're still stuck paying mortgages on negative equity properties. Spokesperson for West Auckland is Flooding, Lyle Carter, joins us now. Kia ora, good morning, Lyle. 2 years on, tell us how do you feel as you approach another anniversary?
Morena, Ingrid. I think first off, we've got to give credit where credit's due. The policy has worked for the majority of those that were flood affected. But for those that are sitting there, my heart goes out this morning to those that are sitting there in negative equity, and there doesn't seem to be any political will to help these people that essentially will end up paying a mortgage on a property that the council owns. So I think that's one of the things that needs to be addressed. Secondly, a community is left behind. Those neighbourhoods that once were bustling neighbourhoods filled with homes and families, those neighbourhoods, some of them have been cut in half, and they are waiting for homes to be removed and be demolished, and that process is taking a long time. And then thirdly as building on floodplains, I don't see why we're still building on floodplains. We haven't learned the lessons from 2 years ago. We're continuing to do it in the city of Auckland. 10% of the properties that have been okayed by the council, when the council said when the Mayor said some of these homes should never have been there in the first place, we continue to build in floodplains. It's just beyond the pale. And then lastly, I think looking after our streams and rivers and the ecology of West Auckland and the rest of our city is really important. So how are we demolishing these buildings? I know that the kitty is getting a bit empty when it comes to removing to do this work, and we need to have some assurance that the demolishing of these properties and restoring of the neighbourhoods are going to be done in a way that looks after the ecology of West Auckland.
I'll get to your thoughts about those houses still being consented for floodplains in a moment, but are you able to sum up what exactly is still causing these delays? Is there any one thing, or is this across insurance companies, councils? Where is the hold-up?
Well, I think for negative equity, people are just trapped in negative equity. It's kind of a stalemate, and we're more than happy to help advocate for those people and come around the council table and have conversations around what it could look like. I mean,
just quickly on that. So is this? Sorry to interrupt, but is this where they've been paid out by the council, but that's still not enough to clear their mortgage?
Yeah, so we did some canvassing of our members and found that a large majority of the people that have bought homes that were flooded were first home buyers. So you've got a young family, a young couple that have bought a home, following the Kiwi dream, and now they're being forced. They bought at the height of the market, and are being gone through the categorisation process. Council says there's intolerable risk to life, which we cannot mitigate that risk. Here's an offer, and that offer is less than what they owe to the bank, and so they haven't really got that much choice but to accept that offer and then be owing their bank, and we just think that's completely egregious. The whole reason for this policy was to protect people from risk. Intolerable risk to their life, and I don't see what could be more of a risk to a young couple or a young family than to be burdened with this millstone of a debt that's not actually really theirs at the end of the day.
Just finally, the 1,500 houses being consented in flood zones that we're hearing about this morning, the assurance from the council is that there are stricter rules to safeguard those houses. They've been built to withstand 3.8 degrees of global warming, I think the measure was. Are you reassured by those assurances?
Well, we were told when we, for example, bought our property in West Auckland, and when others bought their properties, they were told, "Oh, don't worry, it's 1 in 100 year flood." And then 2 floods happened within 18 months, and then they tell us that the 1 in 100 year flood, that's not really accurate anymore. So I would ask the question. I think it's a perfectly normal question to ask. Can we really trust those assurances? And also, when they say the kitty is dry, we're not going to be able to do the flood mitigation, even for the properties and communities that were impacted by flooding. We're not sure if we're going to be able to do that. I don't know how we can trust them on that issue. They need to give more than assurance. So if there's a flood happens and if it destroys the property, are they going to pay out?
Yeah, need some guarantees there, I imagine, to feel confident. Appreciate your time this morning. That was Lyle Carter. He is the spokesperson for West Aucklanders flooding. 2 years on, 2-year anniversary of the Auckland Anniversary Day floods this morning. Right, it is 29 minutes past 8 now. Let's get through to Anand Zaki, who is standing by with a market update. Kia ora, Anand.
Kia ora, Ingrid. Wall Street's main indices closed lower last week. Investors digesting a mixed bag of economic data and earnings reports, and they're preparing for a week filled with economic releases and a Federal Reserve meeting, expecting rates to hold there in the US. The Dow and the S&P 500 fell 0.3%. The Nasdaq up 0.5. The Nasdaq down 0.5% rather. Local top 50 index starts the week at 13,025 after Friday's fall of 35 points or 0.3%. Local market activity, just noting, will be subdued by holidays in both Auckland and in Australia. New Zealand dollar regained a bit of ground this morning, 57.1 US cents, 90.3 Australian, 45.7 pence, 54.4 euro cents, 89.1 yen and 4.14 yuan. Brent crude oil up about 20 cents to 72.5 US dollars a barrel. Gold flat at 2,771 US dollars an ounce. That's close to a record. Back to normal programming today, so do catch us next at 12:20 in Midday Report.
Excellent. We will hear from you then. Thanks, Anand. Still to come before 9 here on Morning Report. We'll bring you some of David Seymour's submission at the oral hearings for the Treaty Principles Bill. Those hearings have just gotten underway this morning. We'll have the results from the weekend's World Manu competition, and we'll have our first chat of the year to Australian correspondent Kerry Ann Walsh. Now with the headlines, here's Nicola Wright.
Teams will be door-knocking in Mangawhai today to check on people left distressed by the tornado-like storm that tore through the Northland town in the early hours of yesterday morning. The Mayor of Kaipara, Craig Jepson, told Morning Report a lot of people have been traumatised by what happened because it's been so severe. He says several homes are write-offs and plenty of others have lost some or all of their roof. Crews are worried about the risk of fires starting as power is restored to homes in Mangawhai. Fire and Emergencies Wipari Henwood told Morning Report damaged lines could spark blazes. He says the most risky time is when power is restored, as people may not have isolated their power or there could be unknown damage to lines. Emergency services say one person escaped through the window of a camper van when a tree fell on it in North Canterbury last night, trapping the other person in it inside. The camper van was at the Balmoral Recreation Reserve camping ground just south of Culverden yesterday evening. Chief Fire Officer of the Culverden Volunteer Fire Brigade, Craig Ritchie, told Morning Report 2 people were sitting at the van's table when the tree fell. One of them became trapped from the waist down. They were eventually freed just before 10 o'clock last night and were taken to hospital with critical injuries. The person who escaped out a window had minor injuries. The Justice Committee Chair James Meagher says its members have worked to ensure a broad range of views is put forward in the first oral hearings for the Treaty Principles Bill starting today. The committee is set to listen to more than 80 hours of submissions in total. James Meagher says they want to make sure the people they hear from have a substantive position to share and are not necessarily from template submissions. South Korea's impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol has been formally indicted for insurrection. The charges relate to his short-lived martial law decree at the start of December. That's the news.
Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies, and today on The Detail, unemployment and the volatile job market in New Zealand, what's in store for 2025 and what's the potential fallout for the country.
It's a scary thought. I think there's a lot of talented New Zealanders that we're going to see on the open job market. And one of the ramifications of that will be that talented New Zealanders look to move offshore.
The Detail on Apple, Spotify, RNZ or wherever you get your podcasts.
Towns and cities weather now with Met Service Kaitaia, Whangarei and Auckland. Chance of a shower clearing in the afternoon. Kaitaia and Whangarei 23, 22 in Auckland. Hamilton, Tauranga, Whakatane and Rotorua fine but could get a morning shower. Hamilton and Rotorua 23, Tauranga 26, 27 the high in Whakatane. Gisborne, Napier and Hastings may get a shower today, otherwise fine. Gisborne 24, 25 for Napier and Hastings. In Taupo, Taumarunui, New Plymouth, Whanganui, Palmerston North and Levin, there's the chance of a morning shower, otherwise it's a sunny day. Taupo, Whanganui, Levin and Palmerston North all 21, 22 in New Plymouth and 23 for Taumarunui. Masterton, Carpetsy and Wellington have showers, could be heavy, clearing to fine by the evening. Masterton 19, 20 for Carpetsy, 17 in Wellington. Blenheim mainly fine, shower or 2 from the afternoon though, 20. Nelson partly cloudy, chance of a shower from evening, 23. Westport a few showers, clear this afternoon, 20 degrees. Greymouth and Hokitika fine and sunny, 20. Kaikoura a few showers, possibly heavy, 18. Christchurch and Ashburton rain may be heavy, clearing this morning. Christchurch 18, 17 for Ashburton. Timaru showers clearing this afternoon, 19 degrees. Oamaru some morning cloud then fine, 18. In Wanaka and Queenstown, there's a few showers this morning, then it's fine. 17 in Queenstown today, Wanaka 19 degrees. Alexandra, some cloud morning and afternoon, 18. Dunedin, a few showers till evening, 16. Invercargill, a few showers, also 16 degrees. It's 25 minutes to 9.
Thanks, Nicola, and you're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. Let's talk sport now with Nathan. Kia ora, good morning.
Kia ora.
The Sevens are surprised to see the Black Ferns go down here, but Australia, I suppose, home crowd, it was a pretty boisterous atmosphere.
Not even home crowd as well. Australia lost Faith Nathan, who's their main playmaker, but also Madison Levi. And Maddie Levi, if you've watched you remember her from the Olympics or any of the big tournaments, big, strong runner. She's sort of like their Portia Woodman, I would suppose, of ball carrying, and both of them are injured. And the Black Ferns, they had to come from behind to try and catch them. Paul Reese Pody Lane gets the late try but couldn't convert her own try. So Australia won the Dubai tournament as well as this tournament there in Perth, but New Zealand have made all three finals there. That's why the Black Fern Sevens sit top of them on the women's side of the Sevens draw. Meanwhile, the men's really different.
Uruguay.
What about, Uruguay, we'll get to it. What about Argentina in the final? Argentina make the final and just rip Australia apart. 41-5 in a final. Of course, they have got the current player of the year there with Rodrigo Isco. But Uruguay, I thought were they good pick. They were the story of the tournament. They were in the pool with us and Fiji. Beat us both on that day. Uruguay coming through there. However, they came up against Spain, and Spain, of course, have been one of the better teams. And I'll tell you this, in the men's draw, these are the top teams in the Sevens series. Now, cast your mind back to the days when we had Carl Tanana and everyone else running around just ripping teams up. Remember that? We go, I wish it was more competitive. Well, Fiji at the top on 48 points, with Argentina on 48 and Spain is the other side who is there on 48 points as well. So it's been a fantastic series as far as that goes. It's really, brought some other areas up. Portugal, of course, doing a lot more with their rugby as well. So that's pretty much what they wanted and what they've got. New Zealand's men's at 7th. The next tournament is in Vancouver a week after Valentine's Day.
Now, some big NFL games today. Travis Kelce, he steps up for these playoff games, doesn't he?
He does, and my daughters now know who the Kansas City Chiefs are. They're like, come on, Travis, throw it to Travis, because, of course, he's Taylor Swift's boyfriend is who he's known as, the Taylor Swift boyfriend team. Kansas City Chiefs, they play the Buffalo Bills. So the first game this morning is Philadelphia and Washington. That's your 9 o'clock game. Should be quite interesting if you are into those. But, the second one is box office. That's the teams with the two quarterbacks that can throw it 100 metres and just interesting play. So Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City, up against Buffalo. Poor Buffalo. Every year they show up. Every year they're amazing. Every year they fall on their face. Maybe it might be this year.
Where are they playing? Is it snowing? I saw a game the other day. It was lit. The field just turned white. It was incredible.
Do. Yeah. And Buffalo have normally had that. But remember, Kansas actually gets colder than they do there. So, rough days for them. But anyway, it should be a good one today. And the winner of these, both these games, they will find themselves in the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks.
Very good. Thank you very much, Nathan. It is 22 minutes to 9.
And you're listening to Morning Report on RNZ National. If you don't want to watch the NFL, you can watch the oral submissions being given to the Justice Select Committee on the Treaty Principles Bill that has just gotten underway in the last 20 minutes or so. The ACT Party leader and Bill's author, of course, speaking to the Justice Select Committee today, David Seymour, the first of dozens of speakers who will speak. 80 hours of submissions will be heard, while a final number of submissions hasn't yet been confirmed. It's understood more than 300,000 people gave their feedback on the bill. Here is David Seymour at the start of his 15-minute speech.
I want to be clear that my beliefs behind this bill and my belief in freedom under the law is a long-held and sincere belief. What we've witnessed in recent decades as the courts and the Waitangi Tribunal have sought to define the principles of the treaty is incompatible with freedom under the law, with a free society where each of us have equal rights. Since the Court of Appeal said that the treaty created a, quote, partnership between races or a relationship akin to a partnership, that notion has become commonplace. Dame Jacinda Ardern, as Prime Minister, just 5 years ago, quoted this idea of a partnership between races at Waitangi. Members of our current Parliament believe that this country would be better off as a, quote, tiriti-centric Aotearoa, where people are divided into tangata whenua, land people, and tangata tiriti, treaty people. Just this summer, we saw a concert where the ticket prices were differentiated with different prices for tangata whenua and tangata tiriti, with different amounts to pay. We see consultation on resource management consents, the structure of local government, and some central government departments taking this divisive approach. Dividing people into racial groups is the definition of racism. Just as sexism is to judge a person first by their sex and then by their other characteristics, their belief that roles in society should be preserved with race as the primary qualifier is the definition of racism, something we abhor, should give nothing to, and should all do everything in our power to expunge from our society.
Well, that was ACT leader David Seymour speaking to the Justice Select Committee about his treaty principles bill this morning. If you want to keep up on those oral submissions, which will last right through the day, there is a live stream available on the RNZ website, rnz.co.nz. It is 19 minutes to 9.
Yes, I caught a little bit of that too, and David Seymour did take questions from opposition MPs. Māori Party Debbie Ngarewa-Packer was certainly challenging him on some of those things, so I think it will be an interesting watch. It won't just be submission after submission. There will be, I think, a good opportunity for some, questions of all the different speakers as well, which will make it interesting. Now, economists from both the left and the right have been evaluating the Prime Minister's new growth strategy. In his first big speech of the year, Christopher Luxon announced a foreign investment agency, science sector reform and a tourism drive. Our political reporter Russell Palmer filed this report.
Of the 4 economists RNZ spoke with, Eric Crampton of the right-leaning think tank The New Zealand Initiative was the most supportive of Christopher Luxon's plans.
This is largely a vibes shift.
It's one he welcomes, saying New Zealand needs more foreign investment and the new Foreign Investment Agency will help. But there's a problem.
The projected path on government spending is going to maintain government spending as a larger fraction of overall economic activity than it was even under Ardern for a very long time. And they are still spending far more than they take in taxes.
Leaning more to the left, the Institute of Economic Researchers Shamabil Yaqub says the government has no way to boost lasting growth.
Their focus has been very much on delivering on the election promises, tax cuts, trying to cut back on government spending. And this is the year they really have to show whether or not they've got the wherewithal to implement long-term economic policies that will be sustained over multiple future governments.
He says a crackdown on anti-competitive industries sounds promising, particularly if it gets bipartisan support, but it will take a long time. And the tourism approach is all wrong.
If we're going to grow tourism simply through volume, then it will be a mistake, because we will have the same problems we had pre the pandemic over tourism. There are just too many visitors, not enough local support.
He says the industry should focus on getting more value from tourists. Right-leaning economic commentator Michael Riddell says much the same. He's also not sold on the new investment agency because New Zealand will find it harder to attract foreign businesses than countries with lower taxes like Ireland.
They've got a company tax rate of 12.5%. Company tax rate in Singapore is also pretty low. We have one of the highest company tax rates of any OECD country. And that's just not even mentioned in any of the stuff that you hear from the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance.
Michael Riddell says national security should be the only reason for restricting foreign investment, and low-skilled immigration should be scaled back. He says New Zealand's isolation is also a big factor, and while economic cycles should revive the economy in time for the next election, the real challenge is productivity. Increasing that by 2% a year instead of 0.5% would make a huge difference in helping us catch up with other countries.
The problem is that hardly any economist, I think, looking at the government's programs so far to date or the announcements, would suggest that we're on track for anything like that.
Ganesh Nana headed up the Productivity Commission before it was replaced with the Regulations Ministry. He says if the government's cutting spending,
then the growth has to come from the private sector. As the private sector is stepping in, there's no sign of that at the moment, and given what we're doing to our workforce, I'm not optimistic.
He also says science shouldn't focus just on commercialisation.
For all of the things that was invested in sending people to the moon, there was a lot that was not commercialised, but in the end led us to, for example, computer technology and the internet and everything else that goes with it.
Room for improvement, then, on the economic growth plan.
And that report there from Russell Palmer. And let's move from Politics to summer pastimes. Dive bombers hit the water in the capital over the weekend when the Z Manu World Champs held their Wellington Super Qualifier event. There was about 165 hopefuls that took part at the Wellington Regional Aquatic Centre. Event organiser Scott Rice said the youngest competitor was 8 years old and the oldest was in their late 50s. Scott joins us now. Hi, Scott.
Good morning, Corin.
So this event just seems to be growing, doesn't it? I mean, that sounds like a pretty good number, 165. Where would you say your tournament, if that's what it is at?
Yeah, look, it's good. We've got 10 qualifiers this year across the country as opposed to 5 last year. So definitely trying to get out to a few more communities. That means more people accessible to the event and numbers growing. So, yeah, it was a fantastic weekend in the capital.
How does it work? How are the categories divided? Is there an age category?
Yes, we've got a Manu division, which is a style of dive bomb, and most of the younger kids do those. So we have a children's, youth and adult age category in each of those for male and female. And then for those that choose to do a different style of bomb, we have a freestyle division, which is an open age group, male and female. So we were looking for place getters in each of those this past weekend to send to our grand final in Auckland.
Okay, let's talk about the Manus first. Explain to listeners who perhaps aren't familiar exactly what it is and how they are judged.
Sure. So the Manu is where you jump off a platform into the water, but you land with your rear end hitting the water first with your arms and legs raised in a V shape. And so then you go into the water, and as you enter the water, you flatten out, your feet come out straight, and that kind of propels the water upwards, and that's by far the most popular style. It was first called the Mangere bomb out in Mangere, South Auckland. It's kind of been shortened to the Manu now. And in terms of judging, for our super qualifiers, which was the one in Wellington this weekend, we use a software we've coined Manu Tech, which we developed with AUT, and we video every Manu or bomb. We freeze frame it at the biggest point of splash, and we measure that splash meterage on screen. So every single bomb, every single jump was accurately measured so we could determine who the winners were.
Unbelievable. What about the sound? Does that factor in?
Yeah, for the final, we're bringing in style, which will be what they do between the platform and the water. It might be a backflip, it might be a cheese cutter. There's all sorts of names for what they do these days. And then we're also working with a marine biologist from the Goat Island Marine Centre in Auckland. He's helping us with a hydrophone, which is an underwater microphone, which will pop underwater to measure the sound of the boom, the sound of the bomb for the final. So there's a few other elements for the final which will, make it a little bit more interesting again.
Well, some people might be scoffing at this, but anyone who has seen young people at the side of a pool doing manus will know they do take them extremely seriously.
They do, and there's a lot of technique in it. It's not just how big you are. Most people just think, you just got to be big, you'll make the biggest splash. That's not correct. In fact, we had a guy called Adonis Neonakis this weekend. He was 12 years old. He jumped off a 3-metre platform, made just under a 10-metre splash, and it was the second biggest splash of the entire weekend. So it's all about how you enter the water, what you're doing, the tuck. And they practice a lot.
Just finally, in the freestyle category, has anybody developed, there are all sorts of weird names, aren't there? People do coffins and gorillas and all sorts of shapes and things as they go into the water. Has anybody turned up with something a bit different, a bit new that you're going, this is interesting?
Yes, there was a guy this weekend, and he had qualified for the final last year. He turned up, his name escapes me actually, but I asked him what he did, and he has one called the chair. And he jumps off and he literally, like he's sitting on a chair when he hits the water, and he leans back and he actually makes a good splash, but it was the first chair bomb I've ever seen, which made me laugh.
Brilliant stuff. Well, good luck with the rest of the competition. That is Scott Rice there, who is the event organiser for the Z Manu World Champs. They had the Wellington Super Qualifier at the weekend. It is 11 minutes to 9.
Gosh, it is super technical, isn't it? It's gone high tech, the Manu.
It is. And I've watched some of my children, teaching the younger cousins and, consulting them on their technique. It is very technical.
Yeah,
very technical.
And woe betide if you get it wrong, because the shame and the sting. the sting if it goes wrong and it ends up into the belly flop. Yeah.
No belly flop.
Okay.
I'm just butting in.
Yeah,
Good morning
to you.
Catherine,
are you a manua?
Not intentionally,
the name
but there's quite a bit of splash, but not intended. It might be a future Olympic sport. I'm loving all these new sports like the speed climbing, all this the break dancing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a sport for not making a splash, why not have a sport for making a big splash? Speaking of which, are you making a splash on your program in 10 minutes' time?
We're having a look at the new school year. New approach to learning to read. Are schools ready for it? The government's committed to bringing in regional deals. Manchester City's had one for years. We're going to speak to the Mayor of Greater Manchester about how it works there. And after 10, Gene Kelly, of course, one of the most famous actors and dancers and innovators, his story's told by his widow, Patricia Ward Kelly, in an onstage extravaganza that's coming to the Auckland Arts Festival. We'll hear her story and hear all about it after 10. And kicking off the political year with a splash, Gareth Hughes and Liam Hare as it gets back to full pace from this week. They're in after 11.
Excellent. Hey, Catherine, were you one of those people that got really excited about getting the new pencil case and the new books and everything when you headed off to school?
Yeah, I kind of did. I didn't do much with them in the ensuing weeks and months, but it was exciting, wasn't it?
Just the potential.
Notebooks.
Cover seal of your
They
book.
were so pristine. My mother used to wallpaper my books.
Yes, I think
Yes, that must have been a
head wallpaper.
Gen X thing, because that happened at my house too.
It totally was. Oh, goodness. Okay, that is 9 to noon coming up in 9 minutes' time. Let's have a little look at the traffic for your Auckland, as you imagine, flowing pretty freely due to the public holiday there in Wellington State Highway 59 between Paikakariki and Pukerua Bay. That is partially blocked south of the Ames Road intersection. A car has rolled there, so expect some delays if you are in that part of the world. For those commuting from Kapiti to the CBD, 39 minutes your drive time, and coming in from Upper Hutt, 36 minutes, 17 minutes from Miramar. In Christchurch, currently looking at around 32 minutes from Rangiora into the central city and 31 minutes from Rolleston. It is 8 minutes to 9.
Well, despite a stellar lineup including Olympians middle distance runner Sam Tanner and long jumper turned sprinter Anna Grimaldi, there was no mistaking who was the star attraction at the Cook's Classic Athletics meet in Whanganui at the weekend. Gold medal winner in Paris, high jumper Hamish Kerr was the name on everyone's lips. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin took in the action.
Peter Snell put Cook's Garden on the map when he ran a world record mile of 3 minutes 54.4 seconds in 1962. But this weekend, running took a back seat to the high jump. Hundreds of fans crammed along the curve to see Hamish Kerr, who won gold in dramatic fashion last year, jump in the flesh. Lucas Hasselbank was in awe of being in his presence.
Pretty cool, you know. It's like first time I've been so close to him. I've just watched him on TV and now he's about like 10 metres away from me.
Cody McPhail travelled from Hawera.
Well, he's obviously the Olympic gold medalist, number one high jumper in the world right now.
And you've seen him do a couple of warm-up jumps.
Yeah.
How do you think he looks?
He looks really, really good. Actually, that 205 he just did was unbelievable. He just sat over the bar there. It was crazy.
Aussie Toby Stolberg came second in the women's event. She was another who had an eye on Kerr.
Well, Hamish Kerr, obviously, but I'm coaching Zane and Connor, who are in my squad. Our coach is in here today, so I'm helping them out.
So obviously, Hamish became an Olympic champion.
Yes.
What makes you you're a bit of an expert. What makes him so special then?
I just think he has incredible spring off the ground, and I think he has a really good attitude towards high jump as well. He always looks so happy about it, and yeah, just an incredible technique and athleticism, really.
He didn't disappoint. Entering the competition at 2.06 metres, he took it out with a successful jump at 2 metres 19, before bowing out at 2.24, 10 centimetres shy of his gold medal leap. Wellington teenager Hugo Jones competed against Kerr.
It's very inspirational, that's for sure. It's awesome to have him to look up to, because that's where hopefully a lot of us boys want to get to in the end goal, being an Olympic champion, but not all of us can be, so it's going to be a bit of a fight there, but it's real cool having him there though. Good to watch him.
Hugo Jones said the Olympic champion got right behind his fellow competitors.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. He's a real friendly guy. He can make sure everyone has a good time, is real happy, I guess.
Did you learn anything?
He's got a lot of pairs of shoes, that's for sure. But yeah, no, he's a very cool guy, that's for sure.
Kerr, meanwhile, was stoked with his reception.
Oh, it's awesome, mate. I love it, eh? Like, it's great to be back and
obviously I've got a big summer coming up, but it's good to be back. And Wanganui is a place that's pretty special to me. I've obviously jumped here a lot, so yeah, I'm really stoked to be back.
And how about the reaction today?
It's awesome. Obviously, I don't compete in New Zealand as much as I would love to, so it's great when I do that. There's great crowds and everyone's coming down and checking it out.
And wrapped with his winning jump too.
Yep, yeah, no, really happy. I sort of only just gone back into jumping just in the last sort of few weeks, so yeah, to be getting anything at this time of the year is obviously good, so yeah, really happy.
As was Jude Elms with his autograph hunting.
So Jude, what did you get signed?
My Crocs.
Why'd you get your Crocs signed?
Because they're the only thing I had on me, and because it was cool.
For the record, Sam Tanner won the Men's New Zealand Championship mile in a time of 3 minutes 55.75 seconds, and Anna Grimaldi won the Women's Para 100 metres in 12.78 seconds.
Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin there, 4 minutes to 9.
And you're listening to Morning Report. Just 4 minutes to go on the program. Let's have a chat now with our Canberra correspondent, Kerry-Ann Walsh. Kia ora, good morning, Kerry-Ann. Happy New Year and happy Australia Day holiday for you there.
Oh, yes. I don't, well, as a journalist all your life, you don't really recognise public holidays, do you? Well, I certainly haven't over the years.
I mean, I don't either, but I say that coming off an extraordinarily long break, so...
Well, good on you.
Yes, indeed.
Aren't you the lucky one?
I certainly am. Moving swiftly along then. So once the politicians dust the cobwebs off as well, you're gearing up for what, election year this year? What are your predictions for 2025 over there?
Well, the first thing I won't do is predict who will win the election, because I think this one is, they're all bizarre over here. For the last decade, you really don't know what's going on in Australian politics and the minds of voters. And so if you predict an election, you'd be a mug. And I'm not going to be a mug. I'm not going to kick off the new year being a mug, so I won't do that. But I will say it's going to be an extraordinary contest, because it's the fake election campaign has been underway for a good 6 weeks already, and it's really, without the date even being announced, it's really kicked into gear from as soon as the new year ticked over. I don't think the boys and girls of government and opposition have had much of a break, and also the independents. There's a lot riding on this. There's the brave new world of Trump's second coming and how to deal with that. And you have a first-term Labor government that desperately doesn't want to give it away. It would be a massive embarrassment for Anthony Albanese and a real kick in the teeth for Labor, considering that they thought that they were quite open about the fact that they had a two-term agenda. So that's coming up. There are views within politics and within Labor that some say he may call within days for a March election, or he'll delay, and the most likely date being pushed around is April 12. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, Ingrid, because we will be watching and assessing and analysing for what they're going to do for Australia in this post-Trump world.
So what are the big issues then?
The biggest issue is housing. The biggest issue is always housing, and this, twinned with cost of living. The cost of living here has gone up an extraordinary amount. It's jumped groceries, your baskets of your utilities, everything has gone up by at least 30%, and then you marry that with 13 interest rate rises in a row. So the Reserve Bank, being an independent institution, nevertheless will be playing some role when it meets for the first time in February to decide what to do with interest rates. There's a lot of pressure on them to move down, and that's certainly Labor will be doing a few Hail Marys in that direction.
Any inkling that is what's going to happen?
Well, some economists are saying, in fact, the majority of economists are saying that that's what should happen. But what should happen and what the Reserve Bank decides to do is sometimes, they're not married. So let's just wait and see. But it's going to be an important meeting.
Big year ahead. Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you again. That is our Canberra correspondent, Kerry-Ann Walsh. That is our program for the day. Lovely to have you with us. We'll catch you back here again bright and early in the morning. Mā te wā. Have a great day out there.
The North Island Weka. RNZ National.
RNZ News at 9. Kia ora, good morning. I'm Nicola Wright. Emergency services say a woman managed to escape through the window of a camper van that a tree fell on in North Canterbury last night, trapping a man inside. The camper van was at the Balmoral Recreation Reserve camping ground just south of Culverden yesterday evening. A digger and a tractor were brought in to help remove the tree, and the rescued man was taken to hospital with critical injuries. The Culverden Volunteer Fire Brigade's Chief Fire Officer, Craig Ritchie, says 2 people were sitting at the table when the tree fell.
It was a bit of a freak wind gust that brought the tree down, and she was able to get out with minor injuries through a window, and he was trapped in that on the other side from the waist down.
Craig Ritchie says freeing the injured man was a big community effort. Kaipara's mayor is expecting many traumatised residents will just want to talk following the storm that ripped through Mangawhai. About 50 houses were damaged and at least 4 destroyed when the Northland township was hit by high winds in the early hours of yesterday morning. Craig Jepson says a council team will be checking in on people from about now.
There's a lot of people that are very traumatised by this event, actually, because it's been so severe. You imagine at 3 o'clock in the morning when this thing came through, it was frightening. So, yeah, there's a lot of particularly elderly people that, they just want to talk, probably.
Craig Jepson says there's a history of tornadoes in the area, but they're unpredictable and difficult to forecast. Crews are concerned about the risk of fires starting as power's restored to homes in Mangawhai. Fire and Emergencies Northland District Manager Wipari Henwood says damaged lines can spark fires.
When the power comes back on, that's probably our greatest risk time, that people haven't isolated all the power or there's further damage inside buildings. People turn the power back on and there could be heightened risk for fire.
North Power says 65 properties in Moya Point and 81 properties in the Old Waipu Road area remain cut off. Israeli troops are accused of killing at least 22 people and wounding more than 100 others who were trying to return to their homes in southern Lebanon. The IDF failed to withdraw by yesterday, in line with a ceasefire agreement with Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. The ABC's Eric Torchek reports.
Lebanon's Ministry of Health says Israeli soldiers shot people dead and wounded dozens more in villages in the south of the country yesterday. The Lebanese were trying to return home to places occupied by Israeli soldiers during a war between Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. Israel says its troops opened fire to deter and remove threats. Israeli forces were supposed to withdraw from Lebanon yesterday, but the Israeli government says the Lebanese army and Hezbollah haven't yet met their parts of the ceasefire agreement.
4 state houses that started to float in the Auckland anniversary weekend flooding 2 years ago are still propped up with poles in Mangere. Questions are being raised about the polystyrene blocks in their foundations, and engineers contacted by RNZ say these became buoyant when water reached them. Whangarei-based geotechnical engineer David Buxton of Northland Geotech ran flotation checks for one of the houses that lifted.
If you imagine yourself standing in the sea at low tide with this block of polystyrene, and then as the tide comes in, trying to hold it there, at some point it's going to lift you off the ground and float you up. Just of what's happened with this house. It's had a big block of polystyrene. As the water level's risen, it's just floated up.
Kāinga Order says the houses were built to the building code and extreme rainfall was to blame for their damage. It says there's no evidence the material in the foundations caused the damage. The architect of the Treaty Principles Bill, David Seymour, has kicked off the oral submissions at Parliament this morning, laying out his case for the legislation. In his opening remarks, Mr Seymour said he believed using race as a qualifier in society was the definition of racism and should be expunged.
When you see people as a member of a group first and an individual second, you miss interesting things about them. You also open the door to dehumanising oppression.
David Seymour says he doesn't believe in New Zealand being divided into tangata whenua, land people, and tangata treaty, treaty people. He said just this summer a concert had ticket prices for those two groups, and some central and local government departments are also taking what he calls this divisive approach. Emergency services are at the scene of a crash on State Highway 59 north of Wellington. A car rolled south of Ames Road shortly before 8:30, injuring one person. Motorists travelling between Paikakariki and Pukirua Bay should expect delays. That's the news.
After 1pm, how did you spend your summer holiday? I spent mine talking to Cher, the global icon. I was in a ratty old t-shirt and a batch up north, and she joined me to talk about getting kicked out of the Hilton Hotel in London and an incident that launched the career of Sonny and Cher. And she gave me some advice on my own wardrobe choices and shared more stories about her early life. That conversation on Afternoons with Jessie Mulligan from 1 p.m. on RNZ National.
Funded through New Zealand On Air. The forecast from Met Service to midnight for the northern North Island from Taumarunui and Taupo northwards, including Bay of Plenty. Becoming fine in most places this morning, but a few showers linger in Northland into the afternoon. For Taranaki, Taihape, Whanganui and Manawatu, scattered showers clearing this afternoon. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, cloudy at times, isolated showers. For Wairarapa, Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast and Wellington, showers may be heavy, clearing and becoming fine late afternoon or evening. Nelson, Buller and Grey, isolated showers clearing on the west coast this afternoon, and Nelson later this evening, otherwise cloud at times. Westland and Northern Fiordland mainly fine. Marlborough and Canterbury, rain or showers clearing mostly this afternoon but lingering for Marlborough. Southern Fiordland, Otago and Southland have scattered showers clearing this afternoon or evening. Chatham Islands rain could be thundery, easing this afternoon. You're listening to RNZ National. It's 6 minutes past 9.
Good morning, everybody. Haere mai. Welcome to 9 to Noon. I'm Catherine Ryan. With the new school year comes a new approach to learning to read. Are schools ready? The government's committed to bringing in regional deals, but Manchester City's had one for years. We hear from the Mayor of Greater Manchester about how it works there. After 10, Gene Kelly was one of the most famous actors and dancers, and now his story is told by his widow, Patricia Ward Kelly, in an on-stage extravaganza coming to the Auckland Arts Festival. And after 11, Gareth Hughes and Liam Hare on the political year ahead, already underway at pace. 7 minutes past 9 it is, on 9 to Noon. The school year cranks back into life from today, bringing with it changes to the way children learn to read. From this term on, schools will be required to teach structured literacy in years 0 to 3, part of the national government's or national-led government's plan to lift achievement, which draws a line under decades of debate about which reading approach works best